Okay, good evening. Oh, we might need to. All right, guys, you're going to have to get close to your mics tonight, I think. Good evening. Welcome to the RSU 5 Board of Directors meeting. It is Wednesday, December 8th, 2021, and we are here at the Freeport High School Library. We have the full board with us this evening, and it's our first board meeting to welcome our new board member from Freeport, Zune. Welcome. As well as our newest member of the Freeport High School student representative, Piper Williams. Welcome, Piper. And we have a very interesting agenda for you both, so it's going to be a great welcome. So, all right, so we're going to get started with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, so do I have a motion for consideration and approval of the minutes from the November 17th, 2021 meeting as presented, barring any errors or omissions? Thank you, Jill and Vali. All those in favor? None opposed. Great, thank you. All right, adjustments to the agenda. I believe we're moving some things around.
Yes, we have two adjustments. I see what you mean. The first one is I would like to move the new business of spectators at indoor winter sports to right after the update on the Freeport High School Scholarship Foundation. And then I would also like to add an executive session at the end of the meeting for a personnel matter.
Okay. All right, so we will get started with good news and recognition. First up is the boys cross country Class B state champions, and I think Craig's going to speak to that.
Good evening. My name's Craig Sickles, Athletic Administrator. Our boys cross country team had a fantastic season this year. They saved their best for last, which is good. The Western Maine Conference Championship, the boys team came in second. At the regional finals, the boys came in second, earning runner-up status. And at the state championship, they surpassed all that and came in first. And so congratulations to our boys cross-country team for earning another banner in the gymnasium. First of all, I'd like to thank head coach Brian Birkmeyer and assistant Matt Greer. We have two runners here tonight with us. Maybe a third, but I'll go through all of their names. We have an alternate by the name of Eric Simmons. Come right up. Yep, just go stand right up in front. Sophomore Will Spalding. Juniors Henry Horn. Then Al Dawson. Jack DeRusso. Gus Holland. And our last junior is Ian Moore. And senior Sam Robinson. Thanks, guys.
Okay, congratulations. I don't know if anybody got to see, I had a friend who had posted the New England race and the start of the boys' New England race in Vermont. And it was like a stampede of men running at you. It was very, very impressive to see. They were running very fast. All right, so we will move on to the report from our student rep, Piper.
Hi, can you hear me well? Okay. So there's a lot of things going on in the high school right now. Athletics-wise, Eli Spalding and Kyla Havey were just announced the Freeport Fall Athletes of the Year. The winter season's starting up, and we have around 180 students involved, which is the 5th most in 22 years. And then academically, our college acceptances are rolling in. It's that time of the year. And we also had a math team meet today. There's a lot going on community service-wise. Within the past month, we had a clothing and a shoe drive. We had a food drive, and we upcomingly have a giving tree for gifts.
Fantastic, thank you. Sounds like you guys have a lot going on. All right, so we will move on to our first public comment, and we do have some folks here, so we'll just go over the ground rules real quick. For folks who haven't participated in our board meetings in the past, we ask that you come up to the microphone, identify your name and where you live, and then just keep your comments to 3 minutes. And we have 2 public comment periods on the agenda. There's one here and there's one at the end of the meeting, but generally folks want to get it up front. So we just ask that if there are more than one person who wants to speak, if you guys could just sort of queue up socially distance behind the podium there, just to make sure we keep it moving along so we can hear from everybody.
Hello. Good evening, all. Can you guys hear me well? All right. My name is Robert Landry. I live in Freeport, and I'm a senior at Freeport High School. And I just kind of wanted to talk about why I think it's important for there to be fans at basketball games and all the winter indoor sporting events. So first of all, like I said, it's my senior year and a lot of other people's senior year. And one thing that I really look forward to in prior years was going to sports games. This fall, I went to almost every single soccer game for the boys to support and the girls as well. And so that's one thing I just think it's very important, and this is time that we won't be able to get back. And then another thing is that it's a really good social event, I believe. Like, as a lot of you know, it brings people together from our school. And then it creates a safe environment, an area for people to go instead of going out and doing other dangerous activities. And I also think it encourages people to get out more, especially with the pandemic and what's been going on. People have been locked up inside their houses, and now it's finally, I think we can get back to more normal. And then another few things for me personally, I wanted to say that even though I stopped playing basketball, I still love to watch it. So I really enjoy it. And then also I wanted to kind of take this pledge for myself that if we were going to be allowed to go to games, that I would take it upon myself to help encourage people to follow mask guidelines and kind of step up. And I feel like that would be something very helpful. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Hello, my name is Peyton Landsbergen. I live here in Freeport, and I'm a senior. Just like Robert, I almost was at every single soccer game this year. I traveled everywhere to see them, and I just wanted to talk about a little bit about my experience. Just like Robert, I do think that this is a privilege to have, and I was very happy that we decided that it was okay for us to be outside for the soccer season. But when I was at the games, I would see people that I would normally not see outside of school, and some people that I've never even met I consider family now, including the players. So, you know, it really brings everybody together in a sense that's safe and just an amazing environment. Also, this year is my senior year, and this year I decided to not do ski team. Every year I've been skiing, And this year I said with my friend Robert here that we are going to go to almost every single basketball game to support my fellow friends here. Like I said, that I consider family. You know, I know that they've been practicing really hard, and just from hearing them, they play better. They feel better if we're here to watch them. And I really wanted to see them play and be a part of the community in that sense. So I really wish that this would pass, because it really helps me and everybody else feel a sense of community in times that community is not as strong. So yeah, that's all I want to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Peyton. So we don't typically clap during public comment. Normal protocol.
Hello. I want to thank my friends for coming to speak. Not even being basketball players, it just shows the importance all around. But my name's Keegan Shea. I'm a senior at Freeport High School. I live in Freeport my whole life. And now that they talked about the importance of it, well, first let me talk a little bit about me. So I have two older brothers that also went to Freeport. And I still remember my middle brother, Erickson Shea. During basketball games, I would sit with my mom or sell a truck of ducks for fundraiser for the basketball program. But I would sit in the middle with my parents, my little 7th grader, and I would look over and see that student section cheering on my brother, and I'd just look over and I'd be like, wow, like I cannot wait until I'm a senior to be able to have that for myself, because that is truly, you can't find that anywhere else. So now that we've talked about how important it is, we need a solution or something that is safer. The main problems that can come up with why we shouldn't do this is like the space in the gym, or like the kids won't follow the protocols or they won't listen. So I took the pleasure of going to talk to other athletic directors across the state, and to hear what they were thinking. And every athletic director I heard back from said they are allowing students into games this year. That's Gardner, Lewiston, Erskine, Buckfield, Gray New Gloucester, Morris, Greeley, Mount Ararat, and NYA. Those are just some of the schools. But NYA's gym is actually half our size, and they're allowing students, so that shows that space shouldn't be an issue. We can have a limited amount in there. And at the musical a couple weeks ago, I was also in that. We had 4 showings of over 250 plus people in the FPAC, and everything from We Know went very smoothly. So I had the pleasure of having a conversation with Miss Galko yesterday, and the biggest concern from her standpoint was people don't keep their masks up in school, so why would they keep their mask up at a basketball game? A crazy number of 175 students she has on a list that don't follow protocols often and all the time. So that's a big number, but then we got to remember the other 400 kids, because we have like 600 at Freeport, are doing it correctly. So allowing none of them to go to the basketball game wouldn't be fair. So this is what I'm proposing. I hope I've put a lot of thought into this, and you can tell, but we can have tickets for it in the main office, so that would allow for not anyone to just walk into a basketball game. I'd volunteer along with my teammates to make these tickets, so it wouldn't cause any strain on the main office or anything. And then you cannot, this is the big thing, you can't get a ticket if you're on that list of the people who don't follow protocols. And they've had a very in-depth list of people through this whole entire time. So this would have us have students at basketball games, but this would also increase the amount of people who are following protocols at school, because they want to go to basketball games. I've talked to so many people that don't play basketball, and they want to be there. So that could help two ways. So one last thing, I took the initiative of also sending out an email to most of the Freeport High School staff, seeing if they would do the pleasure of supervising student section, because we know some students just don't follow. But when I was talking with Ms. Galko, that for sure made her feel better. And if there was a teacher there to kick people out or something if necessary. And it was overwhelming. I mean, I sent that email out yesterday, and I've already had Mr. Anderson, Miss Wood, Miss Chalmers, and many other people also in middle school, and my mother who teaches at Mass Landing. They're willing to step up here if this is the reason we can have fans. again, they said we're seniors. This is our last chance. I don't want to take too much of your time, but we all really want this, and I think we deserve a chance, at least a chance to start the year, and you guys can see how this turns out. Because if we're given a chance, I'm sure we won't let you down. Thank you.
Thank you, Keegan.
Hi, I'm Tara Mcdonald. I'm a parent of a kindergarten student at Moore Street School. And in order to be succinct, I'm just going to read the thoughts that I've prepared for you tonight, but I'm also going to provide it via email also. So not only am I a parent of a kindergarten student at Moore Street School, I'm also a clinical social worker locally. And I'm here tonight to discuss discipline and the use of timeout at Moore Street School. Although I've already shared my concerns with Julie Nickerson, and I was quite happy with her willingness to reconsider these approaches, and I adore my daughter's teacher, it doesn't change that I want to bring public attention to the discipline in our schools, to ask questions that other parents might not feel like they can ask, and to speak on behalf of my daughter and other children because they're too young to stand here before you. I stand here just a day after the Surgeon General address warning our country of a youth mental health crisis, and in a year that our country has had 149 incidents of gunfire on school grounds. If there was ever a time to evolve our discipline and to give substantial attention to child and youth mental health, it's now. Responsive classroom is a teaching and discipline approach that is utilized at Moore Street School. There could be components of responsive classroom that might be okay, but my major issue is the use of timeout in the classroom as a behavior management strategy. Timeout is punishment and is a form of social shaming. Not only do I reject this for my daughter, but I reject it for all students. I don't believe that anyone has bad intentions here, and my hope is that through some advocacy work, our administration, teachers, and those of you in positions of power to make decisions for our children will move forward to objectively and critically analyze the discipline and behavior management methods that are implemented in our school. Timeout has been used at Moore Street School for the past 6 years, I found out. I've been a clinical social worker for 9, and never in that time have I recommended timeout in my work consulting with schools, advocating for my young clients, working with their parents, or in my own home with my own kids. The evidence-based research that has guided my work this past decade suggests that not only is timeout an ineffective method, but that it can be damaging and distressing to children. So to find out that my daughter's school embraces this approach was concerning and upsetting, to say the least. We have access to an enormous amount of research on brain development, relationships, neuroscience, attachment, and shame. Some of the research using brain imaging shows that experiences of relational pain, that would be moving out of connection with a caregiver, can look similar to experiences of physical pain in terms of brain activity. This info was readily available back in 2014. Our shame research shows that girls are more likely to experience shame than boys, and that our younger children are more vulnerable to shaming experiences than older children because they have a stronger desire to please and maintain connections with their parents, caregivers, and teachers. Research in neuroscience suggests that child misbehavior is often stress behavior. Their brains are underdeveloped and reactive and can move swiftly to fight, flight, or freeze state without their fully developed prefrontal cortex to help them regulate. For children and really humans in general, stress could be any number of things: overstimulation, feeling left out, hunger, lonely, exhaustion, or expectations that are too high. Kids show us what they're feeling. They don't necessarily always tell us, but it's our job to listen to their communication in any form, not simply punish them for their lack of development. Responsive classroom is pretty clear in their language and suggestions. Timeouts should be used early, often, and for everyone. Why isn't this loud and clear to parents? How this curriculum has been purchased, embraced, taught to our teachers, and used for our children is actually quite surprising to me. The school and district may have rebranded timeouts as a break chair with a positive spin as a time of reflection, but that's not how most kids experience it. They experience it like my daughter did, the message that you can no longer be part of this group. Rejection, isolation, and that's done publicly. My daughter did experience her one and only timeout as a shaming experience. For a kid who's pretty communicative about her day, she held it in for almost a week and let it out one night at bedtime. She articulately told me she felt sad and scared and bad. Mind you, she was in timeout for talking during circle, what feels like to me a very age-appropriate behavior given the time of COVID and the fact that school is her primary social opportunity. In one of her special classes, mats are taken away if kids are not sitting as expected. My concern is timeout, but also how your teachers are trained and how they're encouraged to use this discipline without thorough training in child behavior. Finally, and I think it's important to share, that I feel like there's a general lack of transparency around the use of timeout, first in the school literature, student handbook, but also in the parent-teacher communication. I wasn't told by Eva's teacher that she had a timeout, so it's not likely that other parents will hear about their child's timeout either. If other children experience timeout as shame, it's unlikely they will run home and tell their parents. Thus, we're kind of left in the dark. I'm most sad that no one has ever checked in with our students. They're little, but they have voices and they will tell you. Over the past 6 years, to ask about their experiences, their interpretation of timeout. I think what you would hear is they don't like it. It's where you go when you're bad. I don't think they would speak of any such reflection or new insights into their unsavory behavior. What I shared with Julie and my daughter's teacher is that what I do get to hear about is who uses the chair most often and who really doesn't like going to the chair or who throws a tantrum when they've been asked to go. I want kids to be given the message that even when you're struggling and even when things are really hard and even when you're stressed, you belong here. You belong in this group. That your mental health will be cared for and attended to regardless of if you can meet the behavioral expectations. The point I'm making is that if students don't experience timeout as the adults have intended for its use, then it doesn't work. Responsive classrooms should know this, but so should our schools. My advocacy work doesn't end here, and the people I've met with to date or are scheduled to meet with are Melanie Sachs, our local state legislature, Shelley Cohen-Conrad, director of the Center for Excellence in Collaborative Education from UNE, Kristen Gorovin, teaching professor at UNE Department of Education, and Bear Shea, a mental health school counselor for the Department of Education, and finally Tara Williams, executive director for Maine AYC. This isn't just a Freeport issue, this is a school issue, and it needs our time and attention. I know we can do better, and I hope you will join me in finding more effective ways to teach, discipline, and care for our beloved students. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara.
Excuse me. Good evening. My name is Adam Landry. I'm a resident of Freeport, and I have a daughter that graduated in 2020 and now a son that is a senior. And I just want to speak for real briefly on a perspective. I'm sorry to talk about the attendance at indoor winter sports from a perspective that is a parent of not a player. So as I was listening to the boys, our young men talk from a perspective of a student to cheer on their other athletes and the athletes that are here saying they want that support in the stands. It's been my pleasure over the last several years as being in the community as a scoutmaster, as an assistant baseball coach volunteer, to experience the joy in watching these young men grow up from boys to young men now, and being able to be there as the community fosters that spirit to cheer them on, to encourage them, to teach them, and develop personal relationship with actually a lot of these young men in the seats there, to the point of, hey Robert, is your dad going to be at the game tonight? Because I play really well when he's in the stands. You know, me being there has nothing to do with how they play, but if they think it does, and I think it does, I'm cheering them on, I'm leading them on. The boys are there, and whatever examples are needed from adults that are basically have no affiliation except I'm a resident of Freeport and my son attends this school, and in my involvement in the school, I'm here to advocate for allowing other folks, other adults that are not parents, in the stands as well to cheer all our athletes on, boys and girls. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Okay, so I think everybody good? Yeah, okay. Thank you, everybody who took the time to come out and share their thoughts with the board this evening. We always appreciate hearing feedback. All right, so we will move on to the report from the superintendent.
Thank you. I wanted to inform the board that their next opportunity for professional development is next week, Wednesday, December the 15th from 9 to 10. You will see a snapshot of Freeport Middle School in action with Principal Grogan as your tour guide. So please let me know if this is something that you would like to attend just within, by early next week. I have one resignation to report this evening. David Smale, FHS teacher, is effective January the 14th. He plans to retire from public education and pursue another opportunity that has been presented to him in the private sector. As an equity update, our DEI committee will meet next Tuesday morning. Next Monday, the Social Studies Curriculum Committee will continue their work, specifically on reviewing tools to use as they analyze their curriculum. We will be hosting a job fair in Westbrook on this coming Saturday on December the 11th at 9 o'clock with other area districts. This is hopefully to attract bus drivers, custodians, nutrition staff, and ed techs to RSU 5. We are also working on devising our own training program for bus drivers within RSU 5 that we hope to communicate soon and to begin in December. We continue with our budget work. We have begun reviewing budgets in the various cost centers. I will present the FY23 budget at the January 26th board meeting. Michelle and I met last Thursday with representatives from all three towns to present our budget timeline and discuss other topics. At that meeting, it was suggested by some of the other townspeople to hold our annual budget meeting in Freeport this year rather than Durham, as we had previously planned, as we would have more room to spread out considering the current state of affairs with COVID. So all three towns were in agreement. So unless there's any concerns from other board members, we will make that change and to begin to communicate that. Our solar project is finally up and running. There will be a ribbon cutting ceremony tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the site in Acton, Maine. We are hopeful to have some of those energy cost savings realized during this year. And as part of my superintendent report this evening, I have invited Fred Palmer and John Patterson to now give you an update on the establishment of the Freeport High School Scholarship. So I want to thank them in advance for all their wonderful work around this.
Hi, I'm Fred Palmer, and he's John Patterson, my assistant. It's true.
You're
About a year ago, actually 9 months ago, John and I and a few others in town got together and decided that we would like to.
Yes, thank you.
Are you going to be quiet? Decided that we would like to get together to see what we could do to.
I'm through.
Good. I'll start over again because I get nervous doing this stuff. About a year ago, John and I got together and decided that with a group of other people that we wanted to try and do something about the effect of the cost of higher education on students at Freeport High School. And so we formed the Freeport High School Scholarship Foundation, and with the help of Becky and Jen Gulko, we developed goals. And we really have three elements to our program that we consider to be all equally important. One is that we're going to offer a 4-year scholarship, assuming adequate completion after each year, to 2 students in the high school. Each year they would be awarded up to $5,000 per year. And assuming they go for 4 years, it would be $20,000 per student. And the third element is that they would be assigned and paired with a mentor to help them through the process of navigating college or whatever school they choose to attend. We have 2 mentors, Tim Fox, who's a doctor in town, and a school board member of some repute, Maddie Vertenten. And so we're really lucky, and that, to me, is the key element to make this thing work, because the graduation rate among in programs where students are assigned mentors is higher than the average graduation rate. So now to the issue of money. To date, we've raised $954,000, and you should know that $1 million supports the income from which, or 4% of the income from which, supports 2 students each year into perpetuity, or at least as long as John lives. And so we're almost at our goal, our first year goal, which is $1 million, and we're second year goal, or a little beyond, is $2 million. So we're hopeful that we will be able to provide up to 4 students significant scholarships that we hope will change their lives. And I have to tell you that I'm overwhelmed with the generosity in this community, whether it's the track and field. I cry at lousy movies, so watch it. Whether it's the track and field project or this, which I consider to be equally, if not more important, the community has stepped up in an unbelievable fashion. And now I'll turn it over to John, and I'm sure he'll do fine.
You know, if I had a useful hobby, I wouldn't hang around with Fred, but I haven't been able to find one. Yeah, we've had a lot of generosity shown in this community, but we're here to ask 2 things of you guys. The first is that we'd like you to consider making an appropriation. We know you can't do it, you can't commit future years, but making an appropriation to the foundation. We debated at length what was a reasonable amount of money to ask for. We know you have a lot of educational priorities, but we would appreciate it very much if you would consider starting this year with a grant of somewhere between $25,000 and $50,000. Our target is $2 million. We hope by the time we've reached $2 million that the foundation will become well enough known so that it'll be self-sustaining and grow like it does in Brunswick. Brunswick, by the way, has an $8 million foundation. Oxford Hills High School has an $11 million foundation. You know, someday when Fred and I are in the home with walkers and eating our dinner out of a straw, maybe we can be approaching that. But we would request that you all help us with an appropriation for the foundation. It's a school program, just run through a private organization. We are legally obligated to use it only for scholarships for the kids at the high school. And Fred and I aren't prepared to go to jail to violate that obligation. So we'd appreciate it if you would consider that as a part of your funding this year. The second request is, and this is directed to those of you who live in Durham and Pownell, we regrettably don't have a lot of connections in those communities. We for whatever reason, we don't know a lot of people there. And if you could speak to us, we're happy to have you do it privately and give us some names of people that we could start with, that we could make contact with. We just don't know where to start. If, during those conversations you'd be willing to make an introduction for us by an email, John Patterson, Fred Palmer are doing this, would you be willing to talk to them? We'd appreciate that very much. That would help us expand the number of people that we are talking to in an effort to raise this money. So that's all I have. The package explains to you the history. You had one more thing, Fred? Yes.
Yeah, I did. The one more thing is...
You got to go to the mic. You know the rules.
good God, where'd that voice come from?
Out of nowhere. The final thing is that you should understand that the Mitchell Foundation and a couple of other foundations offer these mentor programs. None of the Oxford Hills and Brunswick programs do not necessarily offer scholarships for people for up to 4 years, nor do they offer the amount typically that we're offering. So we're unique, but we offer this opportunity for kids to make a significant difference in their lives if they so choose to follow up on it. So thank you.
And I should say that idea was really pressed upon us by Jen Gulko and Becky Foley. They really emphasized the importance of making life-changing scholarships. $1,000 a year, $1,000 one time when you graduate is barely enough to buy books. Certainly not enough to pay for college fees. And we were persuaded that it was really important. If we can't reach everybody, but we can do something for some kids. And we're starting with 2 a year, and maybe someday we'll get 20 a year. But that's why we're doing it. Fred's speaking to me behind me. He wants me to say something else.
Technical.
And one more thing Fred forgot to say. Not only do we require mentoring, but these scholarships will go to kids who want to go to technical school, SMCC, electricians, plumbers, welders, nursing assistants, whatever. We want to make sure that those kids receive scholarships too. This is not just for college. That's really important with our group. Fred, is there anything else you'd like me to add at this point?
No.
Okay, I think, yes, the Abbott and Costello show is over. Thank you very much. We're happy to answer questions.
As always, we appreciate you guys coming and sharing your newest adventures with us, and obviously express our appreciation for all the work you're doing, for the current recipients, as I see there are two. You guys had two last year.
Yes, a junior and a senior. One of the neat things is we give a reward to a junior in anticipation of graduation. The idea is to pick a student who could succeed and get her, in this case, him or her, to increase their aspirations and to shoot higher than they ordinarily would have, because they know when they graduate they're going to have some money.
I think that's a great idea.
Fred would have told you that, but he forgot.
That's why I prompted you both.
Who's that talking behind?
It just comes out behind you. It's me.
It's Michelle.
I'm surprised you're still here.
Yeah, I'm surprised you're still here.
Right.
What are we doing, Fred? That's the question. Why are we both still here?
I don't know.
Apparently there are no term limits on chair.
We have term limits too, believe me.
Do we have Susanna?
Go ahead.
Thank you both, and I really enjoyed hearing you last time you came here, and really excited to see that this is a project that you've actually.
I remember that.
Excellent.
Remember you were talking last
Yeah,
time.
remember that. It's something that you're actually getting underway, and we're having students that have been recipients so far and are moving forward. And really excited also, I think I probably commented last time about the aspect that you've chosen a junior to sort of give those aspirations. Yeah. That's and having that mentorship, I think just that framework, and because college, trade school, wherever you're looking after high school, can be a bit of an abyss to have that kind of framework, and then understand once you get to that place, being able to understand how that structure works, and that's, at least in my experience, is the difference between succeeding and not succeeding, or really struggling. So really excited with all of that. I was interested if you can, you mentioned Brunswick or Oxford Hills with the greater finances, but not having something like the mentorship role. What do you envision the future of this program being? What are your goals? Are your goals for greater financial support for a select number of students? Is your goals to expand the number of scholarships, or add more things such as that mentorship component that can enrich the experiences that you're offering? Just sort of wondering if you when you get to that 2 million, how do you see that?
2 million would allow us to offer 8 students.
Okay.
2 million would allow us to offer 8 students, and the commitment of the foundation is that with 8 students come 8 mentors.
Excellent.
So,
Okay, so you're
And we don't intend that we stop at 2 million. Presumably our successors will continue on and it will grow.
right, but it's sort of taking what you have now and just expanding that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
you know, if we raised a lot more money, we can adapt the program to whatever the need is at the time, but this is our vision at this particular
Fantastic.
point.
Thank you.
Jen.
Again, thank you. I know you guys work very hard on this, and we really appreciate it. Going back to the question about the two communities, I'm from Durham, and I know we have board members from Pownell as well. So what's sort of the advertising that you're doing so we can support that? And, you know, where are you kind of looking for money?
You can have that one.
We are not doing any advertising as such. We have a website. It's in the materials we gave you.
Yep.
FHSscholarships.org for those at home.
FHS Scholarship, yes. For those of you who'd like to make a contribution. We anticipate that maybe at some time in the future we'll actually be doing some print advertising. But we haven't done that yet. We've basically been getting organized and knocking on doors. I've seen ads for the Brunswick Area Fund in the Forecaster. They run ads occasionally, quarter-page ads, and I can anticipate something like that in the future. It's all just a part of our developing marketing program.
I'm going to call on Maddie because I know what she's going to say. Maddie?
They also have a social media page. and I notice whoever's keeping it up, I'm assuming it's neither of you, but they're doing a great job.
Not us.
We did not come here to be insulted.
I just know that's not where you like to hang out. So there's some nice photographs of the first recipients and some shout outs to some donors, which is great. And I do want to point out for anyone listening or anyone on the board who doesn't know that the first senior who got the award is a Durham resident, Ainsley Decker.
She's your mentee, isn't she? Yeah.
And she's awesome.
She's at University of New England.
Yeah. Volley.
Just on the marketing thing, I think that's the area that we're the weakest in right now. And so we're trying to get out, like coming here, and we're going to meet with the Chamber of Commerce and the Town Council if they meet with us.
It would be nice if you could get someone in one of the communities who has marketing background to kind of jump on board. It's not me, but I'm sure there's someone out there.
Yeah, we'd like to very much get board members from Durham and Pownell, people who are willing to be on our board and ask other people for money. I mean, that's what we do. That's the biggest thing that we do, is we ask people that we know for money. And if you guys from Pownell and Durham, if you know people who would be interested in doing that, well, please pass the names on to us.
Volley.
So I just wanted to follow up to what you just said with a request that you send your personal emails to all the board members so that if anyone has
I don't think so.
suggestions, if you want the money, you may want to share your email.
It's on the website. The links are on the website.
Okay.
Is mine on the website?
Yeah, where the list of board members, that there should be an active link for each one of us.
Okay, excellent. And thank you. Fantastic work. I'm so excited and grateful.
We'll take donations in the form of oysters, if we can market them.
We can do that.
Okay.
I thought he was going to say Bitcoin. Any other questions for John and Fred? As always, it's a pleasure.
Thanks.
And for us too, Madam Chair. It's always a pleasure, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Wait, one more before Maddie, you go.
It's actually for Becky and Michelle. So if we're going to entertain their first request, do we fit that into our budget conversations? How would that work?
Yeah, I would anticipate it would be a item that if we wanted to look at adding it to our budget for the upcoming year. I guess I do have a question for you. I'm assuming you've done some research on this. So these other towns that have these foundations, what is the role of, are they getting funding from their school boards and their communities?
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know the answer either, but I would say probably not. I know that the Oxford Hills one, they got a huge donation from a single person, and then that has grown.
And that started it, yeah.
The same with Brunswick to a certain extent, so I don't know that.
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine, once they're built and sustainable, I wouldn't imagine they would need constant, infusions. But I'm curious if at their starts, if there was seed money that came from the districts or not.
Yeah,
I would like to lie and say they did.
Yeah, we don't know.
I appreciate your honesty, Fred.
We would likely be going to the councils in each one of the 3 towns and making at least for the first year to help us get going, to give us some money. We don't know, have no idea what they'll do. Freeport did to the track and field, I know that, the town did.
I think there are 2 ways we could do it. We could talk about it during the budget discussions, and then I had thought that it's also something we could look at towards the end of the year when we know more about what our fund balance is, and to see, if there could be a vote to possibly donate. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye, thanks.
Bye.
Thank you both. And I can't top that, so that concludes my report.
Nobody ever likes to go after John and Fred. So we're going to move new business. Yep. So
Can I
we're
ask
going
you-
to move 13. Oh, Susanna. Yep.
Yeah, sorry, Becky, I've got a question for you. And this may just be a clarification because it differs from my understanding. But I was at the town council meeting in Freeport last night, and they were making a note to the town that about the need for bus drivers. And can you clarify the prerequisite requirements? Are we looking for people with commercial licenses already? Or what are we looking, because there was a little bit of confusion about that, and it just wasn't.
I would say that we're looking for anybody with the current license or the willingness to get their license.
For the commercial license?
Yes.
Okay, so we are including people who would be willing to pursue that, but don't necessarily have it now.
Absolutely.
Okay, that needs to be clarified because that's not what the town is putting forth.
Okay. Well, I mean, definitely if they're licensed and ready to go tomorrow, we're down 3 drivers right now.
Yes.
So, I mean, we would love those people that have a license, that are bored and just sitting at home. So that would be our first option. But we haven't seemed to have much luck in getting those people, and so we're willing to help out anybody who's wanting to get trained.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay. So we are up to the first adjustment to the agenda. So we're going to move to 13A, new business, COVID update. And going to you.
Okay, so I just want to just give you a little bit of data before I turn it over to Mr. Sickles and Principal Gulko. As of today, we are now at 124 confirmed cases. And so we are now almost double our 67 cases that we had all of last year. We have had 37 cases in the last 14 days. At the high school, they've had 5 cases in December, and for a total of 30 cases this year. So we are struggling throughout RSU 5 right now with our COVID cases. We keep pushing, pool testing, and encouraging. We are encouraging families to get vaccinated. But as you know from all of the emails that I'm sending you on a regular basis and the communications that we're having weekly, we are really kind of struggling compared to last year with the number of COVID cases. So I'm just going to kind of set that as our stage. We've had a lot of discussions around what to do now that we're moving to indoor sports. We definitely understand wanting to have fans in the stands to be cheered on. So I will now turn it over to Craig Sickles and Jen Gulko. But there might be a question before that.
Valley?
Yeah, thank you, Becky. I'm curious to know if those breakthrough cases are for vaccinated individuals, so they're really breakthrough cases, or are they unvaccinated students or staff? Do you know?
We have, I would say that the student information around vaccines are that's confidential information that only our nurses have. But I have asked them how many of them are kind of breakthrough cases. And we definitely have district-wide, we're probably running somewhere in the area of about 15% that are breakthrough cases. And I think at the high school, because we have more vaccinated, that it's a higher percent than that.
Thank you.
Hi, Craig Sickles again. Before we talk about COVID and spectators, I want to piggyback on the bus while we have some people at home listening. The winter season is by far the season with the most number of trips, athletic trips after school. It's almost double the fall and the spring. And we have sent home an email to all of the parents to sign our private vehicle permission form in the event that we don't have a bus driver. It's going to happen. It already has happened. The very first indoor track practice, we didn't have a driver. So it's going to happen. And if parents haven't signed that private vehicle permission form yet, please, 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 please do so. First, I'd be the first one to admit that I wish for the way things used to be. I'd love to get athletics back to normal, or maybe even just the new normal, though I don't think the final COVID dust has settled on what even the new normal might even look like. We want to support kids. We want kids to stay in school, and I don't want to have to cancel or postpone games because of COVID. I agree with everything. I agree with everything those students came up and said. I think being a spectator is a vital part of being a high school student. But with that said, a year ago, not a single spectator stepped foot in any high school gym in the state of Maine. So now, a year later, where do we find ourselves? The number of daily and weekly COVID cases here in Maine are setting pandemic records. The number of hospitalization and the number of people on ventilators are setting records. Just a week ago, Freeport High School had 17 positive cases in 1 week. Yesterday, we had to cancel 3 preseason games, boys first team, JV, and boys varsity because of a COVID outbreak and quarantine issues at an opposing school. Just a day or two ago, we made local headlines in the local section, an article about the number of COVID cases we've had here in RSU 5, and you just heard the superintendent say that as of right now, the total number of cases is more than double we had all of last year. We want to, and we're trying to find a way to keep kids in school, keep athletics going, and I think that's the most important piece here. I'm going to turn it over to Principal Golko now.
Good evening, Jen Golko, the principal of the high school. So I wanted to be, I'm shorter than everybody, I think. I wanted to just first thank the students for coming tonight. I shared with some of them that there's been a couple of different issues over the year where I've encouraged students to come to public comment, and they haven't come. And so I said, I hope that they do come, and they're here. And I think that they spoke from their heart, which I appreciate. And I echo Craig's comments. Both of us were high school and college athletes. We both are people who believe deeply in the positive impact of athletics. And I think it's incredibly difficult what our students and our staff and our community have been experiencing in the past 2 school years with COVID. You know, we are tasked with the job from Dr. Foley, from the community, from the board, of keeping kids safe. And that's what we are doing. Our protocols for health and safety are not popular. We know that, but there is a reason for each and every one of them that we have put into place. And we are struggling significantly this year with students following our health and safety protocols, which has been unfortunate. It's something that we anticipated struggling with last year, and we did not. I could count on fingers how many students were chronically breaking health protocols last year. It was more of an attitude last year of we're all in this together. This year, our staff is beyond exhausted and constantly talking about how difficult it is to feel like they have to police students, that their relationship with students right now is about pull your mask up, separate from one another, and that is a really difficult place for them to be. And again, as I said, it wasn't something that we faced last year. For those of you who are members of the board who are parents, you have seen how many emails I'm sending out to say we are struggling significantly with the masks. We are trying all different methods. We've tried conversations. We've tried parent phone calls. We've gone to detentions. Even gone to suspensions for the chronically refusing and then turning into a situation of disrespect. That's how far the mask battles have gone this year. And again, that didn't happen last year. One of the things that one of our students commented about is that we have a Google form where teachers are entering just the chronic offenders. That's not even the everyday offenders. That's just the ones that day after day after day, they're reminding about masking properly and not following it. As of in 2 days, there were actually 218 entries on that form where teachers were talking about kids who are chronically not following the rules. The part that I haven't shared with parents over email, that's a significant battle because it involves a fewer number of the staff, is the difficulty of spacing at breakfast and lunch. So for the past 3 months, Charlie Mellon, our assistant principal, and I go to lunch and or breakfast every day. And for 3 months, we have argued with students every day about the number of kids of spacing out. Last year, if you remember me talking, I don't think I've ever seen a more depressing high school lunch. We had 2 people per table. The cafeteria was silent. I did say, careful what you wish for, because I was like, lunch is too quiet. And we changed that this year, deciding that with the number of vaccinations, that we would increase the number of kids who could sit at a table. So we have either a max of 3 or 4 students at a table. We have posted signs on every table, and every single day we are arguing with kids to the point of it takes me standing at a table to say, I need someone to move, and I'm not leaving until someone moves. It's very different even. It's actually harder than the mask, because usually masks are like this, and we remind and they come up quick. The fight in the cafeteria, and it's been all different kinds of students. It's when I say different kinds of students, it's athletes, it's leaders, it's students who really dislike being at school. It's a huge range of kids. To me, that's really concerning because it's the most vulnerable time of the day. We have over 100 students in one room with masks off, and the purpose of the numbers is that 4 at a table would mean 3 feet apart. We've measured it. 3 at the table also means 3 feet apart, which is a different quarantine. If you're 3 feet apart, that's different than if you're 2 feet apart. 2 feet apart, you are quarantined at home, out of school. 3 feet apart to 6 feet apart, you're able to quarantine outside of school and come to school. So there's a method for our protocols. And so all of this is what we have used as evidence for making all of the decisions, including how we handle spectators at winter sports. We're using this as evidence saying, if we are struggling this much with students at school, what's it going to look like when we tell someone to physically move their seat because they're sitting on top of somebody else at a game or not wearing their mask? And we're worried. We're worried about that the students have, a huge number of students are showing that they are flat out disregarding. Unfortunately, it has turned into disrespect too. And I think we have in a typical year, an incredibly respectful and communal school community. And it saddens me. I hear from all the principals, I still meet with all the principals in Cumberland County, that we're not unique in this fight. I think kids are tired of the protocols and the masks. But it also, I will tell you that if teachers were here to speak tonight, they are exasperated. And I think students don't realize that maybe, they think it's a quick thing to say, pull up your mask or move your seat. But that might have been the 100th time the teacher has said it in one day. And I think all of these things are what has led us to think about how can we keep kids safe? How do we keep kids in school? Because that is clearly my role, is to keep as many kids in school safe and healthy as possible. And how do we also support the athletes at the same time? That we've been thinking about those things as we've been talking and making these decisions. So I'm going to hand it back to Craig to talk a little bit about where our thinking is.
So our original thought was to limit spectators to the visiting and home players' immediate families only. After receiving from after receiving some feedback from students, we met yesterday to closely consider the student spectator issue. And our thought now is to add a small student section to start out with of 20 students for equity's sake and purposes, and so that every student in the school who wanted to attend would have that opportunity. Students would come to the main office, put their name on the back of a ticket. The tickets would go in a hat or a bucket, and a random drawing would happen during some time prior to the next game. We would ask the basketball captains to come down and do that drawing. We would consider opening up to more students if we were seeing improvement in school and during the games, and that they're following the guidelines when they're in the stands during games. We really want the board to know that we have serious concerns about this in terms of maintaining health and safety and keeping kids in school, but we're willing to try. This also helps us with contact tracing, as we'll know who all the students are attending the game. Limiting the adults to the players' immediate family also helps in contact tracing. We may not know the names of the 5 or 6 immediate family members who come to the game, but we'll have a check off and one phone call to a parent saying, this is the situation. We had a positive case. They sat in the front row. They ate a hamburger in the FPAC lobby without a mask. So at least while we don't know everybody's name, we do have a certain awareness of who's there, even with the opposing teams. So we would be able to call the administration at the opposing school and say, these are the kids that you had immediate families attend. Please let them know that we had a positive case. The opposing teams would be limited to the immediate families only. All games will be live streamed, and I want Keegan to share the list of the faculty members who said that they would help supervise, because that would be helpful for me.
Can I add one thing? And just to add to Craig, that Keegan and I had a conversation, and he already mentioned this, is that the other stipulation for this small student section is that students who are named on that chronic list are not able to get on the get the ticket. So if the basketball captains pull 2 names out of the 20 and those 2 are on the chronic, it goes to the next 2. We pull 2 more. And so I appreciate Keegan, and I did appreciate having the chance to talk, that he didn't want to burden the main office, but we feel like we can take that on and we will help. And we feel like I know that it's important for the players. They want to have their friends there too, but I also want to make sure that there's an equitable chance that any student in the building who's a basketball fan who maybe isn't closely connected to a player still has a chance to go to a game. And so we would monitor that list. I think it would also support the teachers, that they feel like they're entering these names and that they know that we're taking that seriously. And we are really trying to see some improvement in students following the protocols, whether we like it or like the protocols or not. So I don't know if there's questions or.
Oh, I imagine there will be. I think we'll start on this side and go around. Jill.
Okay, so my first 2 questions are, the first one, what is the capacity of the gym?
I believe the bleachers hold about 700.
Okay, and were you thinking of checking vaccination cards and IDs upon entry of the people who were coming to this event?
No.
Because as I sit here and listen to this, I keep coming back to the one thing that's been made very clear to me in my short time here, is that I'm supposed to be thinking about the students, and then to be, transparent, I am a school counselor in another district, so, and my role since the pandemic, I do a lot of things that are non-counseling duties, one of which is at least an hour, sometimes an hour and a half of lunch duty every day. And I know it's hard to be in the schools, right now as a staff member. It's harder than last year because we are expected to teach as normal with students who are out remote, and also the community at large is operating under very different guidelines than what the CDC is asking us to do. And it's unfair to the students. So if they weren't pushing back against me every day, I would be concerned, because they should be questioning the choices that are being made. So when I listen to this and thinking about athletics and how the mental health piece is for our students, I really feel like I understand that you have really put a lot of thought in this and you're thinking about their safety. But for me, I worry about the mental health of our students right now. And I think, what I experience every day, I think just adding 20 students to a game is, I just think the number is ridiculously small. So I'd like to review that, looking at the capacity of the gymnasium. I like the idea because I know that the kids, that the staff are constantly asking to pull up their mask. It is so frustrating. But I have also found that it seems very simple. If you take a step back and thank those students who are following the rules, it's amazing, because they're like, oh my goodness, you noticed? And I'm like, yes, I did. And then all the kids around them that don't have their masks up, suddenly they're going up. So it's a weird phenomenon, and I've tested it numerous times, and it's fun. I like the idea, if you're on a list, you can't get in. But again, that takes manpower to enforce that. But I like that the students have been creative and had a solution for that. So I think if they're willing to help with that, I'd like to see that move forward. I also think it's important, I'd like to see people vaccinated go to these games. So that would be another thing I'd like to consider. But I also understand the hardship of finding someone who will take tickets and check those IDs. And so that's what I would like to share as a board member.
Piper.
I just wanted to comment one thing too that I forgot to say is, like, I've tried the psychology of, it's my perfect mask moment. So I stand in the hallway and I say, perfect mask, perfect mask, perfect mask. Like, how could you possibly mess up this perfect row of perfect masks? We try that philosophy of it too. And I do see it impact sometimes in the moment. But I think, like, I meant to say that before, that I think that's something teachers are trying to praise the kids who are following. Because, to the students' point, we have a lot of kids who are correctly following, but we have a huge percentage of the students who are chronically not.
Piper.
I'd like to share my opinion both as a student athlete and a member of the fan section commonly at the fall sports, that I think playing on the field when you have fans in the stands is like an electric feeling. Like it helps me, like it boosts my morale, it makes me want to play better, and also makes me feel like we have a school community. Like there's times in school where it can feel a little less, but playing on the field with it feeling like the town is on your back, it's very nice. And I know as a fan you can see it on this field too. Like you can see how happy the people are that there's fans there and how it's represented. And I understand that COVID cases are climbing and there's not a huge percentage of people wearing their masks in school, but I think that is something that can be dealt with, like with not allowing people on the chronic mask inappropriate wearing list. That will help boost. I also believe that people who go to the games are willing to sacrifice wearing a mask and maybe having to stand farther apart from people in order to watch these games, because it's something I know multiple people who have came up to me during school and asked to enforce the fact that we can have fans at games, because it's something we so want as a student body. And I also would like to point out that you said that you'd allow immediate family of away and home visitors, which is 6 to 8, which may affect the capacity of people you'd like from the school in stands, affecting the 20 number. But I know often as a former basketball player, there was a lot of times where there wasn't 6 to 8 people of a family member. There was maybe a parent or two, maybe a sister or brother. So it didn't really seem as if there would be 6 to 8 per player. It may be like 1, 2, or 3, which would greatly impact the capacity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Piper. Vali?
Thank you. Difficult discussion. I'm just going to limit my comment now to one simple question, and it follows what Jill was saying about the capacity, and not the total capacity for a normal time, non-COVID time, but what is the capacity allowed by the CDC in the gym? And do people have to be 3 feet apart in the gym? What will be the maximum capacity following CDC guidelines?
So the maximum capacity is somewhere near 700. The CDC is recommending masks inside. The CDC is recommending social distancing. We, as a district and a conference, and most high schools in the state of Maine are requiring masks inside. So I don't know the answer to if everybody sat 6 feet apart, how many would the gym seat? That I don't know.
Is it something?
Is that your question?
Yeah. So and not even 6,
know.
but I mean we require when people are masked that they be 3 feet apart. So if all the spectators were 3 feet apart, how many?
Well, at least cut it in half. At
Yeah,
least
but what
by
is
half.
that number? Then it'd be 350. So you're saying cut it in
350.
half. Okay.
Yep.
And how many do you anticipate following the slots that you just delineated for family members?
Yep. So I just did some quick math. We most of our boys' games are triple headers. Most of our girls' games, all of our girls' games are 2 games, JV varsity. During a JV varsity, most JV varsity parents come to a home game or an away game, and if it's immediate family, if you use an average of 6, and there's 12 players to a team, that's 48 players in both the home and the away, JV and varsity. I'm not even going to include first team. So 48 times 6. You'll have cheerleaders. You'll have cheerleader parents. Then you get the players themselves. So there's another 48 to add. The officials, the timers. We're going to be over or close to 400. If on average 6 people come per player.
So can I ask where that 6 comes from? Because, I mean, if you look at the average size family, it's like 2.4. And if you take one of them as the student, you're down to like 1.4.
Yep. Mom, dad, Grammy, grandpa, and a couple of siblings, maybe a cousin, maybe
that's
an
immediate
aunt,
family? I mean, I think immediate family is in your household. Like, I thought that was the point of doing immediate because it helped with the contact tracing because they're in the same household.
We're not going to identify or define what immediate family is. That's up to them. And when we come and if we have a case, we're going to call that parent and say, you're in charge of what immediate family came. You need to let them know.
Okay. But you wouldn't have to include, when you're talking about in the stands, I mean, the players aren't in the stands, the officials aren't in the stands, the cheerleaders aren't in the stands. I mean, they're all on the other side, right? They're not counted in the people we need to space in the stands.
JV parents are, the JV players are in the stands for the varsity game. The varsity players are in the stands for,
so half
for
of
at
the
least
kids.
the first half.
For a bit of
and,
it.
and again, I'm not including the first team players who might stay for both of those games.
Yeah. Okay. Vali, keep going.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to offer that at this point in time, it's more important for students to be able to cheer the team than for grandma. So something to consider, maybe we can cut down on the number that's considered immediate family, and we can have the room at capacity, everybody masked, 3 feet apart, vaccination required, and if you're on that list, you don't have access to the gym to cheer on, and try it. And if it works, we continue, and the first time that things get off the rails, we shut it down.
I would just add from just like one logistical perspective of, if you remember all the conversations we had about the homecoming dance, was that we were asking for vaccination or a negative COVID test, and there was a lot of not great feedback about that. That was a difficult situation that in the end worked out and we were able to have the dance. But I know that places like the Expo and things like that are requiring vaccination. I don't know of other high school gyms that are doing that and asking people to show vaccination cards.
Piper. I know. I just want, she clearly has a question on that specific.
I was just wondering if you knew if other schools were limiting the student amount, or if other schools were just allowing, like what other schools' perspectives were on student fans.
So that's what Keegan had shared, and Mr. Sickles had also done some research that it depends from school to school. Some have no restrictions, some have restrictions based on the size of their gym. And I think it just depends on the situation. I think that every principal is looking at their numbers of positive cases right now, and trying to, if we've learned from COVID, to be flexible based on what's happening with cases.
Maddie.
Thanks, but I think Beth has her hand up too. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss this, and thank you, students, for coming and speaking. I always love it when our students come in and speak. So a few thoughts. I've been wondering what our pooled testing numbers look like, and it occurs to me that this might be an opportunity to get those numbers up. In addition to not showing up on that repeat offender list, why not have it be required that you're participating in pooled testing from a student perspective? I think that would be a great idea, and I've been wanting to get those numbers up. Second point is, I'm not sure about requiring vaccinations. We don't require vaccinations, at least not yet, to be a student at the school. But I agree with all the other things that we can enforce in all the ways that have been suggested tonight. And then I just wanted to comment, because you guys hear me always talking about equitable treatment between the arts and athletics. And when we had the musical a few weeks ago, I don't remember what the capacity was. It was 2/3 or 1/3 of the normal FPAC. Was it more? There was a percentage given, and I think we should treat those situations the same, even though we know that the fans that show up at the musical are not yet quite the number that show up at sporting events. I think we should, these are equally important for these students. And I do know that at the musical, we didn't allow any eating of any snacks in the FPAC lobby. All eating had to take place outdoors. So I think if that was the case for the musical, then certainly that's the riskiest part of this whole thing. We should not have snacks being consumed in the lobby. Other than those points, I agree. I think 20 is a pretty small number, and I think that we could do this smartly. We could do this well. I think our kids really, and our community needs this. So I think we should increase that number.
Can I comment on that? So the protocols that I have written up now, and the signs we have say no food allowed in the gym. And there's signs that say no food beyond this point, and that people have to eat in the FPAC lobby and they can't bring food into the gymnasium. Boosters is something that a lot of our programs rely on as far as funding. And there are some booster groups who've lost one season, some have lost 2 seasons. And, I think if we can have 100 kids or more in the high school cafeteria eating spaced apart, those same tables that the kids eat on during lunch in the FPAC will be in the FPAC during a basketball game. So I think, for me, my recommendation would be to allow concessions, but to only eat in the FPAC lobby.
I'm just going to point out that performing arts boosters took a hit during the musical, because that's how we raise money too.
So, and then I would just, I'm sorry. I didn't know if you want me to comment about our pooled testing numbers are very low at the high school. So we are, I think, just under 15% of our students that are participating in pooled testing. We tried to communicate that with parents. We have rolling enrollment. I would say for anybody who's listening, that it's very quick process, very easy. It takes 5 minutes. They don't miss class time. It's in between classes. But we have not been successful in convincing people. So I wouldn't want to put that as a stipulation for getting into the game right now, because I think that would significantly limit if we said who was able to be there. The other just comment that I would make, the difference between the space regulations for the play were every other seat. So we were 50% capacity in seating, and it's about 500 seats. That's what we do during the daytime. So for students is every other seat. It didn't work like that for the shows because the families came together, but it was spacing in between. So I don't know what the exact number for capacity was. I would say one of the things that I totally empathize with the kids about cheering is that, which is something where I just want to put out there, that we're worried about whether we have 10 kids or 20 kids or 50 kids in the stands, is it's very hard to cheer with your mask on. You know, when I want to address the cafeteria, the whole cafeteria, and say, it's 11:59, it's time to take your trays, I have to go like this or they can't hear me. I step 6 feet away from everybody and I shout that loud because I have a loud voice. But I think it's going to be very natural that kids are going to want to when they're cheering for their friends. Craig and I were watching highlights from a game that happened in South Portland last week, and every kid at this exciting moment pulls their mask down like that and then cheers. And I think it's just something that we need to recognize that's going to be hard to police. I hope that our hope in that starting with a small section is to see if we are able to manage that and have kids space out and keep their masks on even when it's hard. And then if they are following the protocols, increase that 20 number to a larger number. That was the hope of that, because we're having a hard time managing kids right now in large groups every single day since August, that if we started with a smaller number and we see how it goes, then we would consider expanding that.
Jen.
I don't want to rehash anything that's been said, but there's one thing that hasn't been brought up that I've thought about and have an issue with, is the whole idea of the immediate family. Nowadays, I feel like we can't even use that really as a term. I think that if we are going to be, champions of equity, we need to be equitable in terms of each player gets 4 tickets, 5 tickets, I don't know what, and they get to bring who they want to bring, because and again, I just want to say my daughter doesn't play basketball this year, so this is not a personal thing. It's just, I think about my experience and who came to the games to watch my daughter, and I have parents that live in Brunswick that never step foot in the gym, but I have a sister that would come to every game if she could. So I think we need to be very equitable and fair about how we put those, and it takes the onus off the people that are checking, who's immediate family. I mean, if they're not going to ask, then it doesn't really matter who it is, right? Because you're going to call player A and say, hey, there's been who are the 5 people that were there with you? Please call them. It doesn't really matter who it is if we're not going to deal with households. And so I think we need to look at that for sure. And I also, agree with Maddie in the fact that, I was involved in boosters. I understand the concessions are a huge moneymaker, but I feel like that is something that might in fact create one of the bigger issues, is having those tables out with food and people and congregating. So I would say that would be something that I would say is something they need to look at not doing, which is unfortunate because I know it's a big moneymaker. But and lastly, the students, I understand what everyone has said. I just really hope that we can come up with something that allows more than 20 kids but doesn't put everyone in, harm's way. Thank you.
So just to comment on the immediate family, it wasn't our intent to define what immediate family was. It would be up to the family. And how I saw that going is we'll have the rosters of not only our team but the opposing team. People walk in. What player are you a family of? Joe Schmo, and we put a check by Joe Schmo, and they all just walk in together, and they
what if
go
Joe
and sit.
Schmo brings 12 people? Are we okay with that?
Yeah, I don't think that'll happen, but I think it's some.
I think it'll happen.
Yeah. We're asking, from the away team that when siblings come, they do come with their parents, because we don't want 14 brothers and sisters to come for one player. But again, we weren't going to make this, are you second cousin removed? It was family members, and we would make a check mark beside the player, so that if we had to contact trace, we could then call the school and say, these are the players who had family members attending, would you let them know? And from our side, we would look at our list and we would call the parent and say, whoever you had there, please let them know that there was a positive case.
I just have a hard time with that, because someone who's a rule follower, immediate family is immediate family.
Well, we can take the word immediate off there if you'd like.
No, it's not the word immediate family, it's the way in which, the equity piece, which is someone can bring 12 and someone might only bring 2 because they feel like 2 is what they should bring, and then another family is going to just say, hey, I'll bring whoever I want, because there is no number. I just see it being an issue, but that's just my.
Susanna.
Yeah, and also going on my own experience as an athlete, I didn't always have family who showed up for me, but it was, neighbors or other people in the community. And I know, Adam, you mentioned where other students were saying they were playing well when you were in the audience. And, I can imagine you going not to support your own kid, but because there was some other kid who you had as a Cub Scout, for example, who saw you as a mentor and wanted you there. And so just having this idea of family being somebody who fulfills that role and isn't necessarily directly related. And, this could be, in some senses, a can of worms, because you don't want a student to invite 5 of their friends to bypass the student section and have them come in as, cousins or acquaintances, where you're at a different school, and the person checking, your family doesn't know who these people are. So I think, there's a little bit of careful negotiation that needs to go on there, but I am just uncomfortable with defining family in a way that implies, and especially if you're talking about rule followers, people who are going to say, I don't have family I can invite. My parents can't come, so therefore, I'm on my own. And I know this was happening, in my own experience. I've seen it happening with other people. And so I think that's just maybe a semantics issue, but it's one that I think is quite important. So I just want to think about that. And I don't, there are ways, whether it's giving people a certain number of tickets, invite people who are important to you. And so I think that's one concern I have. I have a handful, most of which have been addressed already, so I won't repeat those. But, at that same time, we talk about the number of sort of 6 to 8 and where that came from. I'd want to know also, and maybe this was addressed, but it seemed to skim over it slightly, whether that's a number that we're seeing is actually showing up. And if people are really having 6 to 8 people on average show up. I think I like the idea of seeing this as an opportunity to expand pool testing. I don't know that, Jen, you mentioned saying that if we are cutting if we are saying you have to be in pool testing to show up, are we then limiting the 15% of the students, or is this a way to say, to get more people participating in pool testing? I don't know, what that would be, how that would be. I really like, Keegan, especially when you came in with, I liked all of you coming forward, and you all had different things to contribute to this, but what I really liked about yours was sort of the solution focused, and, taking the onus off people who are really already overworked. And I like that idea of sort of being able to attend as a reward for doing well. Jill, you mentioned how so many students feel or can feel overlooked by doing well. It's sort of just taken for granted. And so saying that, hey, you're doing this, you have this opportunity. And how can that encourage more people to behave in a way that supports the protocols in school? I mean, Tara, you were talking about sort of the discipline side, and I know it's very different whether you're talking about a kindergartner or you're talking about somebody who's 17 or 18 years old. But, you know, being told that because you had your mask off or because, you know, you got on this list, therefore you've had these opportunities removed from you, is still, when you're talking in a social circumstance of a group of friends wanting to go to a game, and yes, you might have a lottery system, but it still puts sort of those people who can go and people who can't go, you know, against each other. So I think that seeing how we can work with this so that we are encouraging, having it, I guess, sort of encouraging more people to follow protocols so that we're not necessarily saying, you know, you've behaved well, you can get this, you haven't behaved well, therefore things are removed from you. But how do we encourage more positive behavior? And I know I've participated in sort of sports that aren't gymnasium specific, so audiences are quite different, but I'd also want to know, you know, what is the number of people who would normally come to a basketball game? I've never been to one in my life because I decided I hated the sport when I was in kindergarten. It hurt my finger and nobody passed to me. So I just, you know, what that is. And then what about when we're away? And I can see that if we're hosting a game, we could say each person has 6 to 8 people who can come, whether you're on a home team or whether you're an away team. But when we're away, we're under the rules and regulations of other schools. And, you know, you again, Keegan, you know, we're talking about reaching out to other athletic directors, other schools, what their protocols are. If we are at a school that doesn't have protocols and we say, okay, we're allowed these 6 to 8 people, we're allowed our cheerleaders, we're allowed we are allowed our student section of 20 students, that may be fine. That's a very different situation if we're in our gym where we're controlling what the other team can do as well. And I don't know how much can we control that they have 20 students. But when we go to another school, that situation can be very different. I mean, if we play at NYA, you mentioned about NYA having a gym half of our size. So presumably spacing is quite different. And so I guess those are just some of things that I want to say. But I really like that, you know, each of the students who came, you know, really came speaking from their experience and what this means to them and have, you know, really engaged other students. I mean, Piper, you included, you know, talking about engaging other students and other staff in this. So thank you all.
Beth.
I just have a question around, you were saying something about the spacing in regards to quarantining. How many students are currently quarantining at the high school? Just because I know that if you're vaccinated, you don't have to quarantine. So is that, I mean, I know, like, approximately, are we having, like, a lot of students have to, I mean, you can kind of ballpark it. You don't have to, like, tell me an exact number, but I'm just curious, how much does the quarantining affect all of the students?
So I actually can't share a number. We don't even share that with the staff.
Not even a ballpark?
Well, what I can say is that the higher our vaccination goes, what we are seeing is we are not seeing like 30 and 40 kids being quarantined, you know, per case, like we did last year because of the vaccinations. But each case is unique in how many students they were around. Did they ride the bus? Did they play sports? Right. How many classes were they here for? So it's unique in that. But certainly, the higher our vaccinations go, the fewer then we have to have quarantine.
Right. Okay. Because you know, after Jill spoke and thinking about, obviously, we're not sitting 3 feet apart here, you know, and I know we don't have our masks off and we're not eating, but, you know, we do take our masks off to drink, and if we do eat, we do take our mask off. And so it's hard to, you know, want to put all of that on the kids and in the same way, I guess. I guess now I'm going to get confused and lose my train of thought. But I guess basically I feel that 20 is way too low, as well as what others have said. I don't believe that we should have a vaccine requirement. I do think that there is something in regards to, school being a required place, and we're talking about this being a place to go of choice. And so I get wanting to be very safe for the people that do choose to go. But again, I feel like at this point, with the amount of vaccinations that we're getting and the testing that's available through the school, it does seem that we should be able to allow more people in if the capacity at non-COVID time is 700, especially after attending the musical, which we have already talked about, and have that be almost, I thought they had said it was at 75% capacity in the FPAC. That was my recollection of the number. So to me, I would feel like the same rules should apply for the bleachers in the gym. Obviously wearing the masks, I agree, and we're having the list of the people that aren't compliant. I also feel very strongly that there shouldn't be any eating in the FPAC lobby. That was something that we at the musical had to enforce, and the boosters had to take the hit, and that's what it was. And if that is going to be the place where the most exposure is going to be, why not limit it right there? So with that, I mean, those are pretty much, and I also agree with the fact of just saying players can bring either 4 or 6 people and then, leaving it at that, and however that works out for each player. So, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a way forward. I would agree that I think 20 is too low. I would be more inclined to limit the number of people opposing can bring. Like, I wouldn't say none, right? But I would say, 2 to 3 for opposing seems fair. Like, if the parents want to come, if the siblings and the aunts and the uncles and grandma, she can come to a home game at their field or at their gym. I'd rather take those seats and allocate them to our students that have shown a clear interest in attending, as opposed to reserving 6 to 8 for every kid when 2 to 3 may show up. I'm also in favor of just doing a straight number per person, not saying family. I mean, if I'm an all-star basketball player, which I'm clearly not, and I have a scout that wants to see me play, well, he can't come or she can't come because they're not family and they're not a student. The ability for community members who have been coaches and pack leaders and that want to see the kids that they have seen grow up go to these games. Like, I think that's important. That all lends to the community. So I would rather say, if you're ticking off their names on the list anyway 4 times, then I don't care who the 4 people are. You just get 4 ticks, or whatever the number is. I'd rather, bring down the number of opposing to free up spots for the students. I am definitely in favor of the, you have to be in good standing and not on the naughty list to put your name in the hat. I think that would encourage folks to try to do better if this is important to them to get to these games. And if it's not important to them, then okay, that's fine. They don't have to put their name in the hat, and maybe it improves the mask wearing at the games because the non-compliant ones don't go. I think there's a way forward that the students can be more involved. I just hate to set aside a certain number of seats for these theoretical people that may or may not show up when we know we have kids that this is important to, that want to be there, and that this is part of their experience. As I think about the concessions, I mean, you can go outside, right? There's nothing that says you can't have concessions and just step outside the door and eat your snack or whatever. I mean, it's a little chilly, but, I don't know if you'd have to completely wipe out the ability to have concessions. Just not eating them in the lobby, I think, is fair. So I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts are on, what you're looking for from us. If this is something that you're going to revamp and decide, or if you're looking for some sort of direction from the board. But I'll let you think on that for a second, because I'm going to grab Colin's thought.
Thanks. Yeah, I think I just had a couple of questions, to provide a little context for the decision-making process, whoever is the agent of that decision-making process. I guess first is, What are, oh, and to be clear, anyone who can answer these questions would be welcome to answer them. What are we seeing in terms of in-school transmission rates in relationship to community spread or transmission rates? Because it seems like that, while understanding that this is an evolving calculus that we're trying to do in terms of understanding how we're creating rules and responding to trends, it seems like understanding, well, what are we seeing happening locally, and then how are our decisions related to that information? So for example, if we are seeing very low in-school transmission, but we know that there is increase in community spread, should that not inform the decisions that we're making about who it is that we're inviting into the school environment? So that would be the first question. Second,
okay, let's answer that one if
good,
we can.
Good.
Okay, I'm probably the best to answer that one or take a stab at it. I'll start out by saying there are a lot of cases where we don't know. We do ask that question every time we have a positive case. Do you have any idea where you have, contracted it? We've had 2 times this year where we feel like there's been in-school transmission. One was at Mass Landing, and we went remote. And the other one was at Durham in a particular grade level. Most of our positive cases are coming, I would say, from the community. So either they are telling us they got it from family members, or they went to a party, or they, that kind of thing. So most of the transmission is coming not from in school while they're in school, but outside in the community.
Great, that's really helpful. My second question had to do with what are because I was just very clear, Jen and Craig, how hard you're working to maintain the health and well-being of the students, but also to keep the students in school. And I'm just curious, again, for context, what are our limits or our requirements in terms of either provided by the CDC or the state, or just how we're operating as a RSU? What's the cutoff for when we can't run the program? When we say we have to shut down the basketball program, for example, in terms of cases, or is there any sense of what the tipping point is when we decide that there are too many cases in the high school and we have to go remote again? Because it seems that having an understanding of that, considering how hard you're working to, how hard you and your staff are working to teach and to educate the students, that just that question of like, well, at what point do we tip in? Are we trying to accommodate other really essential and important factors? But at what point does that just tip us into a totally different category that we're trying to avoid? In other words, shutting down the basketball program, for example, or having to go remote.
A lot of that depends on whether we have enough members to field the team. And I think that's what happened in an opposing district, so that if they get a case on their team and then the team members aren't vaccinated or participating in pool testing and they don't have enough people to compete, that's usually when we have shut down games. And I feel like that did happen a couple of times last year, but can you remind me, Craig?
It happened this fall. We lost a football game. We lost a field hockey game. We lost a homecoming football game. The 3 games that were just canceled, the opposing school's first team only had 2 players who weren't in quarantine. The JV team only had 3 players who weren't in quarantine, and they asked us if we wanted to send our varsity team. This was a preseason exhibition game. It wasn't a regular season game. So we chose the side of caution, and we did not send our varsity. They had plenty of varsity players. We just thought for a preseason exhibition game, it wasn't worth the risk. Had it been a regular season game, we probably would have thought about that in a little different manner. And I want to comment on the community transmission. When you have a home basketball game, when you have any type of game, the community is coming to that game. Not only will the RSU 5 community be coming to that game, but the opposing schools community will be coming to that game. So that is not a school event, that's a community event.
And the one thing that I would say is, I think through all of these comments, it's important to me that everybody, on the board knows and that the audience knows that both of us would love to see a full FPAC sold out, a gym sold out. We haven't had a pep rally in the gym shoulder to shoulder in 2 years. If you remember, they used to pack, I don't know how they do it. It's like a clown car, but they would put 8 children in one of those booths in the cafeteria. We had no limits or anything like that. And so it's not that we don't want that. It's that we are balancing trying to keep having no in-school transmission. The kids are tired of hearing me at lunch. I walk around last week. I was like, 13 cases, 14 cases, 15 cases, spread out, and the week we had 0, I walked around and was like 0 cases. So back up, that we're trying really hard to keep it that way because we've been happy that we have not seen that at the high school. And I think that would put us in the question of what do we do? 17 cases last week caught us off guard for sure. And when I've said to other principals, we had 17 cases last week, they were like, you are joking. We didn't expect that. And so I think that's when we were, again, very pleased that we did not have, because people have asked me at what point, is there a number? And I have used that to say we do not have evidence right now. And there's some that we don't know about, like Dr. Foley said, where families cannot tell us where they think that they contracted COVID, and that we are trying to keep it at no in-school transmission. And balancing that with, we of course wanted to hear the gym full and the FPAC full and the cafeteria back the way that it used to be. But that's the conundrum that we have right now.
We'll add too that our first home game is Saturday, and the logistics behind getting admission people, I've asked the boosters I've given them a sign-up sheet and asked them to provide 2 people, two parents to work the admission table. The boosters will get paid for that, but it's a job that people aren't jumping at, and if they're going to have to stand there and count or do questioning, we may not have anybody at the admissions table. So I worry about the logistics of counting and the percentage or the capacity, because I'm not sure we have the capacity or the logistics behind that type of finite scrutiny of how many people are in the gym and how many people are not when you include the basketball teams, and it's just not an easy thing to do.
And I would add just one more comment. I think I would want to be really transparent of the higher the number goes in the gym of students or people, the harder it's going to be for us to manage following the protocols. We can set them, but I worry about our ability when those stands are full in a non-COVID year to be able to get up into the middle. And I think I just want to make sure that that's clear. Even if we hire teachers and have student volunteers, I think that that's going to be hard, that the reality of policing the protocols is going to be a significant challenge. And we did not ask teachers to do that because the year has been so difficult, and that feels like a big question to ask them to stay and then police in the stands if they're in charge of getting people to follow the protocol. So I just wanted to say that I think that will be a challenge. If that's what the decision is, then we will do the very best that we can. But I think that that's a reality of the situation of the number of people in the gym.
And I'm not sure I'm really in favor of ballooning the number of people in the gym. I just would be interested in seeing it reallocated, weighted more heavily towards our community and less towards, accommodating opposing teams' extended families. Maddie?
And I wonder if a per athlete allocation system with an actual paper ticket might actually simplify that process.
Jen?
I agree with what Maddie said, and I mentioned it before, because I'm confused now with talking about protocols and enforcing protocols. Then I sort of go back to, then it's a free-for-all. Whoever shows up gets in. Like, I'm confused, I guess, about what the current policing is going to be, if it's not going to be, if there isn't going to be a system, what then is currently what the plan is. Just, I mean, I might be missing something, but I'm confused about what the plan is to police if we don't want to police.
So maybe to help paint a picture, especially I think when Susanna said she hasn't been to a game. So the students sit in a section together. And so that's, to me, different than the families that are kind of scattered around. And so our goal is definitely to, have people follow the protocols. And the concern is what I was saying is, as the number of students grows, the harder it is, and that's the part I understand, when they're cheering and when they're excited and when they're with their friends, and what Piper was saying, that like electric feeling. That's when we see like masks are coming off and harder to manage. Whereas when we have a smaller group of students, I think I asked you this, Keegan. I can't remember if I asked like how they felt about the students sitting anywhere, kind of scattered and not having a student section. And I don't think that was a popular idea, to just have them all over the gym. The idea is that friends sit together, they come together. I went to high school games, and that concern of that number growing, I think, is more of a concern than policing families. We may indeed have to police families, but I think we were basing our concern on what we're seeing during the day of that part.
Valley. Thank you for giving the context, and I really appreciate it. However, I have to say that this is an opportunity for the students to show that they can be responsible. Students have to go to school. They don't have to go to the games. If the students don't take the responsibility seriously, they know that there's a consequence, and the consequence is we shut it down. So I really think that we need to give them the opportunity. I think they can be mature enough to preserve the right to attend these games. And if I'm mistaken and they don't, then they know what the consequence is up front. So I'm all for giving them the opportunity. I'm all for giving not assigned seating, but assigned number of guests per player, and you can control the numbers a lot better because you know how many players there are and how many tickets each one brings. And I'm also willing to consider that the students may be open to the idea of just spreading around the gym because that's what's required to be able for them to be there. So maybe they'll be fine with not all being in the student section. And we do need to have them 3 feet apart. So the more they're willing to spread around, the more students who can come. So let's give them an option and to present what the alternatives are, and they can decide how they want to do it with you. And absolutely, we need to encourage them to find people who can monitor too, because we don't want to put it all on you. You have overflowing plates already. So students, would you be willing to help?
I think the students need to be leaders and step up and self-police themselves, right? Like they need to be, they need to see when their mask comes down that Keegan's going to come over and he's going to tell them, you're not going to blow this for all of us. Oh, he's coming off the court to put your mask on. So we can't have, there's another public comment period at the end if you guys have something else you wanted to say. But Piper.
Hopefully I can share what the students wanted to say, but I think that as students, we want to go to the games so badly that we'd be willing to sacrifice some of the things that we obviously, like, we want to be in the student section, we want to be all together, we want to not have to wear masks, but we realize that's not going to happen and that's not realistic. And I know from my experience at basketball games, the student section was a little more spread out. Like, obviously, like, the seniors would sit in the front and, like, the juniors would, but, like freshmen and other, like, it would just be more spread out. It's not like everyone's in the same 3 rows. And I think that we'd be willing to do that because we'll just sit with our friends in, like, our different sections and stuff, and it wouldn't be a big deal. And I also think that, as was already said, some people may be less likely to wear their masks at school correctly because they don't want to be at school and they don't see, like, well, like, what's the big deal if I get in trouble at school? But at a game that we all want to be at, where I think that people would be more prone to wear their mask correctly and take advantage of things that would help up the chances of future games and future more normal situations. And I understand that it's obviously, like, we're not going to be able to have 500 students in the gym, but I'd like to see more than 20 just as a way to kind of up the morale. And maybe even if people start wearing their masks correctly at games, maybe it will transfer to school and maybe it will transfer to a better reaction and just attitude about COVID and limiting COVID throughout our school.
Becky?
I think I'm just conscious of the time, and so I want to try to move this along. I think I've heard from the board, from the majority of the board, that they would prefer that we just go to a specific number per student. I think that that's pretty much in consensus. So, Craig and Jim, do you think that would just be 5 to 6 people per student? What would you recommend for a number of tickets per student?
Well, I guess I'd recommend the number 6. The first couple of games, we would probably use paper tickets of 2 different colors for the 2 different games, but that I would order kind of like a student ID. We would order just a maroon plastic pass that said basketball pass 21-22, and those plastic pass, those 6 would go to each player, and then no one gets in without a plastic pass.
Yeah, that would be good.
I think we would still limit the opposing spectators to immediate family only, because as difficult and as frustrating as it is to deal with our own students, I have no desire to deal with visiting students.
So I think you limit it to 2 people per player. And if you bring 2 kids, okay, but it's likely going to be their parents. And then you limit the likelihood that it's going to be a big student section. Right? I mean, if we have to check off who you're with anyway, I mean, we're doing that work anyway, right? Is that what I heard you say?
Well, if we go to the tickets, we won't be checking anybody off.
Okay.
If you have a ticket, the visiting team, if they don't have a ticket, will say, whose player do you belong to?
Right. And you get 2 checks next to Joe's name.
Or 4, whatever.
Then I'm not sure 2's enough, like maybe 20 isn't enough, because I think, there was no spectators last year at all. And I think to limit it to immediate family, which we can define for the opposing team, mom, dad,
siblings,
grandparents, and siblings, and if there's a divorce situation, the step parent is the same as a parent.
So why can't you just limit it to like 4 people per family on the opposing team?
Whatever you could.
I just think that that's what we're hearing, that we don't want to get into something where, we don't want to name who's the most important people in that child's life, whether it's the opposing team or our team. So what I'm hearing is that we would give 6 tickets per athlete, and I like your idea of, the
home athlete.
Right, and that's a ticket where you hand out, it's a plastic something or another, and then you're done with it for the season. I guess if they lose it.
Well, you'd have to collect it at the game, and then you give it back to the kid at the next practice, right?
Right.
No, they would just show it and walk in.
Oh, they'd keep it. Okay.
That plastic ticket is.
But you don't want the kids who are on the non-behavior list to get the plastic, so you'll have to check anyway.
Well, we'll let them handle that, whatever works. I don't want to micromanage that. But what I'm hearing is that the home team would be 6 per athlete, and the opposing team could bring 4. And that will help limit the number. So the other issue that I'm hearing about is the student section and what to kind of do with that. And I had asked Craig, like, what, how many athletes are at an average game? And he had said about 45, I think you had said, that it could be more on a big competing one.
Yeah, just
so that's why
yeah.
we had started with 20 to begin. I don't know. I mean, I think we can up it to 30, and then if it goes well, we'll let more athletes come. But
More students.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you. More students in the fan section. I think we're trying to keep kids in school 5 days a week. And I do want to say, I don't think there's going to be a lot of policing of this. Craig is on, he's doing many things at those games, and so it's going to be an honor system for the most part.
Yeah, most ADs that I've spoken to, when I've asked them, do you plan on being the mass police? Pretty much they've said no, unless it's blatant down under the chin or no mask at all.
Mm-hmm.
The students will just be asked to leave, and the parents will be asked to leave. So I heard 4 spectators per visiting player, 6 per home player. We'll start out with a student section of 30, which will do a lottery and a random drawing.
So tell me, what's a typical 40?
Well, it depends on the game. If it's a home girls game against Freiburg, it's going to be very little.
Yep.
If it's a boys game against Yarmouth, or even a girls game against Yarmouth, the student section looks quite different.
I mean, if I do quick math of 26 athletes between the two teams and 6 tickets for us and 4 for them, and 40 student tickets, you're looking at about 300, right? So you're under 50% capacity with 40 kids for the student section. Mm-hmm. And if that's, if that's kind of on the high end of a game, not probably the biggest game, but and for the ones where there aren't that many takers for the tickets, then there aren't that many, and that's fine. But I mean, and then if we're finding it's not working and we have to scale it back, I'd rather do that and give them the opportunity to earn that spot. If that's, I don't know, Vali?
Yeah, I would rather just calculate the capacity of the gym based on individuals sitting 3 feet apart, spread around the entire gym, and then give out tickets to athletes based on those numbers.
Yeah.
But people are not going to be sitting 3 people apart.
Can we say that that is one of the protocols that they have to?
No.
Yeah, family members don't have to.
Well,
but
family members don't have to, right?
That's impossible to.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to. I mean, most of you have all been to games. I mean, I'm not going to put administration in the place of policing that kind of thing.
But she's saying if you limit the number, then you've capped what the potential exposure is by doing
correct.
that.
Well, I
correct.
think we've just
so,
done
I
that.
mean, if
Yeah, I think
people,
so too.
right, and that's where we want to start. And obviously, we do not have another board meeting until January. And so this is something that we brought to you because we wanted input. But, whether to go up or down is going to be a decision that we'll be making after every game. So, but I'm fine with starting with the, 40 student tickets. And for those that are our chronic offenders, they're not allowed to participate till their behavior gets better at school with the mask wearing.
And concessions, no food is to be eaten inside. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think everybody was pretty clear with that. I didn't hear anybody that felt like they should be eating indoors.
So they can have concessions, just got to eat outside. Hold on, Maddie.
Really quick money-making idea for your boosters. At track meets, we used to bring instruments, noise makers. You can rent them out at the games, and that'll cut down on the yelling, and you can ask people not to yell. You can use noise makers instead.
The artificial noisemakers are not allowed.
That's our rule though, right? So we could change it?
It's a Western Maine Conference rule.
Oh.
And outside, it's a condition of approval.
Oh, okay. I knew it was outside, right?
I just want to say I appreciate that this is so hard because nobody at a higher level wanted to step up and make a decision that we all would live with and then put it on the local level. So here we are, how many minutes doing this? And the contact tracing is hard with this. And I said the vaccination thing, I'm not married to it. But I also know when I go out in the community, if I want to go to a concert or I want to eat a meal in New York City, if I want to go to the Makers Market this weekend, I watch families turned away because they did not have vaccinations. I mean, so if we're not going to do that, I'm not going to get upset about that. It's just an option. But I think I'm going to trust our leadership. I think we've made it loud and clear. We want to see more students go to these games. So I trust that this Saturday there will be students there, and if it goes well, that the next game will have more students if the capacity allows. So I appreciate our discussion tonight.
So you got what you need?
Craig or Jen, do you have any last minute questions or anything?
Go get that list from Keegan before he leaves.
Exactly.
Thank you both.
Thank you, guys. Where are we? Okay, here we go. We're back to administrative reports. Back to the beginning. Technology, goal review. Gail. Okay.
Hello, I'm Gail Wolotsky. I'm the technology director here. So when you look in your packet, you won't see goals from 1920. And just for those of you that don't know, then I transitioned into this position. Previously, I was teaching STEM at Mass Landing School, and I started as the tech director in December of 2020. So I would say that this transition went as smoothly as we could have hoped for with the support from our talented tech team, tech department members, and jumping into this role in the middle of budget season and hybrid learning and so much Zooming, it really helped me better understand the behind the scenes work of the department that I previously had been totally unaware of as a teacher in the district. Our department supported the teachers with the tech to provide quality instruction to students, whether they were in person or learning from home. Each student was assigned a device to use at home and school. We were there to help with connection issues, repairs to devices, and problem solving with users. As we provided this daily support, we were also preparing for the current school year with ongoing projects such as the refresh of laptops in grades 7 through 12 through the MLTI program and the transition to the new financial software. Although the department didn't have formal goals identified for 2021, I feel our team worked tirelessly to keep tech running smoothly last year during the pandemic. So now I'd like to look at goals for this current year, which you'll find in your packet. And it is pink. The first page is our equity goal. Within our department, we're going to take steps to strengthen our practices with equity, inclusion, and diversity in mind. This will include continuing to provide equitable access for all of our students, making sure they have access to a device at school and in the event of needing to learn remotely. We were able to secure grant money to continue to provide hotspots to families without internet access at home. And as RSU 5 continues to take action based on recommendations from the equity audit, our department will participate in any district-wide professional development in this area, as well as meet on our own to further our learning and engage in reflective discussions around technology as it relates to equity. Our team includes the RSU 5 data specialist, Paula Roberts, who's instrumental in supporting the district's analysis of discipline data recorded in PowerSchool. So she's helping us out with that. So that was the first goal, the equity goal. And if you, on page 2, the next page, you'll see our department's second goal, which is tied to RSU 5 strategic goal number 4. I kind of think of this second goal as, for our department, it's our behind the scenes goal. What are we doing to make sure staff and students can do their jobs efficiently with the technology provided? So one way we can do this is to ensure reliability and consistency with cross-training in our department. In order to share the load and provide backup, our team is always learning from each other and seeking training as necessary. One example of that is Paula is providing ongoing in-house Power School workshops for administrative assistants at each school, as well as maintaining a dynamic website to serve as a resource for teachers to reference as they navigate the grading software. The technicians are also, as we speak, also aiming to cross-train with our major systems like running the board meeting, the tech for the board meeting, which I really appreciate, you guys. Thank you. And also cross-training with major systems such as our mobile device management, Google Admin Console, and network management. We're just trying to keep learning as we go and learning about different things so we can help support each other. We're also working on another action step for our behind-the-scenes goal is to improve our network and security systems. We plan to replace network equipment this year throughout the district at a discounted rate through the federal E-rate program. We'll also work to ensure our network is secure by participating in a risk assessment program and taking action based on the results. We'll look ahead to apply for future E-rate funding to improve the security of our network, including seeking bids on a new firewall to monitor and control incoming and outgoing traffic, network traffic. And finally, I'm planning to identify and work with tech teacher leaders at each school by forming an info tech district team. Wish me luck. I'm hoping they'll join me. Representatives from each school could come together to make connections, share best practices, and discuss big picture issues related to technology in the district. I really want to make sure our department stays in touch with the education side of the district, and this could be a way to keep us connected. So those are my two goals, or our two goals for the tech department, and I welcome any questions you might have.
Happy anniversary in the district.
Thank you.
It's been a whole year.
Yeah, almost.
It's just flown by.
Thank you so much.
Questions for Gail? Jill.
Yeah, just a brief comment. I think this looks great. I think not every school system has the resources that this district has, so I think every day we should be very grateful for that. The fact that you have technicians to help with Power School, not every district has that, and it's amazing that we do, because it's a complicated software system and it needs support. So I appreciate that we support that for you. So thank you for your presentation. I think it looked great.
Thank you.
Great. Oh, you almost got away.
No, I just wanted to echo what Jill said. I really appreciated the presentation. I guess my question it just has to do with resources and whether you feel that you have the resources that you need in order to meet the goals that you've established.
Before I say yes, let me just look it over. I mean, I'm feeling so grateful. Like Jill said, we are really fortunate in our district, and between a combination of support from our community and the board, and also last year we were able to secure a lot of funding through grants because of COVID. So one of the silver linings, right? I think coming from a teacher, one of the biggest things that we are always struggling with or what I struggled with as a teacher too is just the resource of time. And that's really a big piece of it. So one thing that I can pinpoint, because I asked you to wish me luck on forming a team of teacher leaders from each building. You know, I really want to be in touch with each school and feel connected and understand what their needs are at the different schools. So I think that resource of time could be a challenge for that. But I don't know, maybe I can bring chocolate. I'm not sure. I don't.
Yes, I think chocolate always helps.
Yeah.
If we can just add that to the minutes, the chocolate was recommended. No, thank you so much.
Yeah, no, I feel like we're in good shape.
Yeah, I love the building of that team. Like, it is difficult, right? Because everybody's everyone's busy and has so much on their plate. But I think the benefits of bringing together those leaders, because there's somebody in every school that's just more in tune to this, that's just more in their wheelhouse of what they enjoy and what they're really good at. And so if, you can seek those people out and be, working with that to make sure that the schools have what they need. And I mean, talk about silver linings, the technology strategist, I don't know if that's what we called them, but last year where we were able to have that person who was really able to work with teachers and not just how do you use the technology, but like how do you educate with the technology? And I think that's a huge opportunity for us. And I think, I'm sure you'll be successful in getting your volunteers, and food always helps. And I'm excited to see what you guys are able to do.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, Gail. All right, so instructional support goals, Bonnie Violet.
All right. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here tonight with all of you to share our goals for the Department of Instructional Support. And you have a packet in front of you, so I'm just going to kind of go through it. I'm not going to go through each one. The first one has to do with social emotional learning. This is right in my face. The first part of this is we're looking really to identify the skills our students need to learn and to really provide professional development to our staff so that they know what these skills are and they can teach our students to become independent learners. We started providing some PD last year, but we're doing a whole lot more this year. So this, as you can see, is an ongoing goal that has continued this year. It has definitely prompted some rich discussions about the expectations we have for our students and for our special educators. So that in itself has been a big plus. The second part of this is we're really looking at ways to create a process to identify the skills that our students need to learn and to teach those skills. And one way we're doing that is by using a curriculum called PATHS. We did some research on this a couple years ago, and Durham Community School really piloted it, and we started using it there. And then, over time, in the last couple of years, we've been using it K-5. And, essentially, the purpose is to teach coping skills to our students, really to help them with their worries, their stress, their frustration. And one of the benefits of using the curriculum is that teachers can use the same language when they're working with students or teaching them, and they can also share strategies with each other and relay the information that is more student-specific to the teacher the student will have the following year. So I would say that most of our staff at K-5 are using it, but not all. So that's an ongoing goal for this year as well. At the high school, I should say we're also exploring using the same curriculum, really geared for middle schoolers in grades 6 through 8. And some of our staff are ready and willing and excited about using that, so we're going to be doing that this year. At the high school, we started a new course for our students with disabilities called Interpersonal Development, which is offered for 1 credit. Students receive instruction in emotional regulation, executive functioning, and social skills. The teacher is using, a workbook on executive functioning by Sharon Hansen, and also the growth mindset coach, which actually I saw right here in the library table a few minutes ago. So this is the first year of the course. Our new special ed teacher, Mark Oliver, reports that students are doing well. It's early in the school year to assess how it's going, so stay tuned. We'll have more information as the year continues. The second goal was really looking at ways to use technology as accommodations for our students so they would have better access to content and curriculum. And I have to say, last year, we probably more than met this goal. The purpose was to ensure that all students have access to meaningful instruction. And, we've taught our staff to use any number of online programs, speech to text, text to speech. We've purchased tech apps for students to access. We have met this goal and beyond for our students with disabilities. So the goal, which is really wonderful, it has become embedded in instructional practices. So I would say this goal has been met. So that's wonderful. The next one has to do with reading instruction. So we've been providing reading PD to our staff to learn different reading programs. This past year, teachers were given a data collection template, and the staff at each school customized the templates so they could collect data. The data is reviewed regularly and shared at IEP meetings to assist teams to make determinations about IEP goals and services. It serves to collect data from every source available, complete a careful analysis, and be proactive in planning the best instructional approaches for our students. So last year, what we did with the data is we reviewed it at PLC meetings, and for students who made slow progress, we actually did a deep dive to kind of better understand their struggles and to plan instructional approaches to better address their needs. We involved our literacy strategists to help with that. And this year, we're continuing this practice and taking a closer look at ways to address the needs of students that have reading challenges. So moving on to this year, we're going to be more consistent with the use of the PATHS curriculum. We're looking to use it with students in grades 6 through 8. At the high school, we're planning to use student surveys and interviews to assess the effectiveness of the interpersonal development course. Just like we did with reading, our second goal is math. This year, our focus is on math. We created, just like we did in reading, a math template that has been shared with staff. And right now, we're providing PD to the special ed teachers in grades K to 5. A couple of our special educators are attending PD offered by the DOE, and they're going to share information with other staff. Lisa Demick, whose background is math, has provided PD sessions around math content and how students learn math, and she's planning to continue that throughout the school year. When I say throughout the school year, we're talking maybe 2 more PD sessions. Just like we're doing for reading, we're going to be looking at student progress in math, and what we want to do is match instructional approaches to fill, to student needs. And at some point, probably towards the end of the year, we're going to be looking at math instruction and how to formulate math goals for students based on whatever their learning gaps are. So that's what we've done this year, and that's where we're headed that's what we did last year, and that's where we're headed this year. All right.
Questions for Bonnie? Susanna.
I've got a question which may or may not be relevant directly to what you're speaking, but this isn't new and not new on my radar, but there's some articles that came out today that I was reading about approaches in education in looking at something like math, in how math is taught, and the equity in teaching math, and just wondering, and some of that gets into tracking math, and this one article was talking about how what is the representation of students in sort of calculus class in high school versus those who are in a class that might be seen as a lower level class, not just sort of in direct math capacity, but also looking at socioeconomic backgrounds and racial backgrounds, and just wondering what the district is doing in terms of, or has been doing in terms of looking at how it's teaching math and tracking students, and how that's involved in relating to what you're discussing. And math is, just one example, because that was the article I was reading today, but it's been discussed on various subjects, so thank you.
So I think, Dr. Foley, can you answer that question? I see you pulling your mic. I can speak for students with disabilities, but I can't speak for math in the district.
And that doesn't need to be that's a question I have broadly, but you know, it does a little bit relate to disabilities. Who are students that are
Mhm.
getting the additional support? How is that being allocated, et cetera? So it's something that, I said, I wasn't entirely certain it's necessarily relevant to what you're discussing directly in full, but I think
Yeah.
parts of it are. So this, again, doesn't need to be a full discussion at the moment. It's just an overall
Well, I would just say, generally, we don't do any tracking until high school, with the exception of at the middle level, there is one higher level math class that's offered. I think that some of that data is still being disaggregated, correct, Cynthia? And so I think we'll have more to come on that, like looking at the AP, whether it's in math or someplace else. So we are, as a district, looking at that. And beyond that, I would say that our kids with disabilities, they have access to the same programming.
Well, they do. And what we look at with students with disabilities is, you know, I think you're all aware that they're evaluated to take a look at, you know, the disability and the impact of the disability on reading, writing, and math. And so we're able to take a look at how they're doing with math based on the evaluations we do. And then once they're getting math support through, you know, specially designed instruction in special ed, then we do ongoing progress monitoring. And that's how we make sure they're, you know, getting the correct approach to meet the whatever the gaps are in their math skills.
Beth.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Sure.
I was just curious, are you discussing the diversity, equity, inclusion at all? Because I know a lot of other people had it as a goal, and I'm just wondering if you guys are touching on that in your department.
You know, we have always promoted inclusion. We do that all the time. It's like the hallmark of special ed, is to really make sure that students receive the educational program they need in the least restrictive environment. And so it's a major discussion at every, you know, IEP team meeting. We're always looking to promote inclusion, and we talk to teachers all the time. You know, what do you need to do to help this student succeed in a general ed class? If they're not in a general ed class and getting specially designed instruction, we're always discussing what can we teach this student so that they can return to the general ed classroom. So yeah, it's definitely.
And then of course the special ed staff, as far as the diversity and equity training, they're participating in that.
Oh, that yes.
Yes.
Yep.
But when Bonnie is pulling them as special ed teachers, they're really more focused on looking at student growth and advancing their skills in reading and math.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Jill.
So yeah, I was trying to make sense of your handout here, and could you speak to when you're doing assessments at the lower grades for reading?
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing assessments for all students, or just students who are identified, or what how is that happening? What kind of what kind of assessments are you doing, and to whom, and what is the data what kind of data are you looking at with that?
So, you know, when we evaluate students to determine eligibility, we're using standardized evaluations. They're normed. That's for eligibility. Once students receive services or begin to receive services, we're using the same grade level benchmarks that are used at each school. So, you know, some schools are using Fontes and Pinnell, they're using TC, they're using NWEA. You know, we're looking at all the same benchmarks for our students.
And I guess I'm just wondering, are you assessing are you doing any assessments to all students, looking for students that might be struggling with reading?
Well, that's not done through special ed, but every school has an RTI process, and they also have a student assistance team. So there are various levels of RTI. You know, on one level, you know, general ed teachers provide different interventions for students in the general ed classroom. If students need more than that, the the staff at each school will take a look at tier 2 interventions. If students make progress and they're on a great positive trajectory, they continue on. For some students that continue to struggle, even with tier 2 supports, they're referred for special ed testing. Does that answer your question?
Yes, for the most part. Thank you.
Okay.
Maddie.
Hi, Bonnie.
Hi.
I apologize. This might sound like a surprise because I didn't think of it until Beth was just asking about the equity stuff. So I don't know if you've given any thought to this or could speak to it. So if not, I'd love to maybe hear about this when you come back next year.
Sure.
But we've been talking about student voice.
Yep.
And our school or building principals have been all talking about what it's like in that school environment. But I'd be curious to hear how you might be hearing the voices of your students under your care. I think that's an important thing for us to consider.
Okay. All right. I'll reflect on that.
Could you at least reflect quickly on
Okay.
yeah,
I guess I will do
about at what age we usually start pulling kids into their IEP meetings? Because that's the first thing that comes to my mind about student voice.
Well, we really start pulling them in high school. And, it's the rare student, even at the middle school, who feels comfortable being in a meeting with administrators, all of their teachers, their parents, and listening to, how they're doing. We try to be positive, but we're also talking about, what's difficult for them. And that's really hard for some kids. At the high school, they're more mature and, they understand that it's, the IEP process is really to meet their needs. And so they're more able to discuss that and hear what people are saying. But even then it's hard. And some students don't want to come. So that's where I think we really try to give students a voice. But sometimes it's easier for them to discuss it with one teacher rather than come to an IEP meeting and have, 5 people around the table. And they're under, they're like, under pressure to, listen and try to make sense of this, So we give it a good shot, but we don't get as many students at the high school coming to IEP meetings. I'd like to see more. And I think at some point we need to really kind of look at that. I'm not sure how you make an IEP team process more user-friendly. I think you'd really have to prep kids, So I think we probably need some work done there, for sure.
I could see how that meeting environment could be intimidating. Maybe there's a way to incorporate their input, maybe not in attending, but, providing some input to their teacher and to their parents, maybe a questionnaire, even a video if they're comfortable with that. Just, and even at younger ages, I think that building that kind of self-advocacy at an early age could be very beneficial.
Yeah. And I would say that our special ed staff do talk to students before their IEP meetings. I mean, even with our younger students, I mean, they really discuss, there's a meeting coming up, this is what we're looking at. What do you think about that? So we do get their input, but it's not, we're not hearing their voice at the meeting. But at least people are reaching out, and, when we're at the meeting, they're able to discuss what the student would like to see for him or herself. And of course, parents come, and parents definitely, share what their child, would like to see for, again, for themselves.
Okay. Thank you, Bonnie.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Board comments and committee reports. Yeah. Board comments and committee reports. The first one is the information exchange. Yep. I haven't gotten there. I didn't skip it yet. No, I was just reading the title of section 10. So board information exchange and agenda requests. Seeing none. No, sorry. Maddie.
Sorry, I'm jumping the gun today. I was interested in the comments, the public comments today from about responsive classroom and timeout, and that's something I had not heard before. Everything I've ever understood about responsive classroom has sounded great to me, but I'm not that informed. So I guess I would like to request that we hear more about that at some point. No, I'm not suggesting a full workshop, but I'd like the opportunity to understand that perspective and what the administration, what the teachers, how they might respond to that. I'd like more info.
All right. Any other requests, agenda? Jen?
I just have a question about one that came up, and I'm not sure how we left it. I think we left it with Cynthia was going to be looking into the memorial situation.
That's with the policy committee?
Okay, it went to the, okay, I forgot how we left it, but yes, now I remember.
Yep. Beth, I assume that's your hand going up.
Yeah, this is kind of a silly question, but from the MSBA conference, I won a book, and I'm just wondering if it ever came. They were supposed to send it to the central office.
What's the name of the book? Maybe it's on my desk.
It was the speaker.
speaker.
The speaker who, the main speaker there.
George, was his name like George? I want to say George Koros or something, but that sounds wrong. I don't know.
He was like
Is
the
that his
keynote.
name?
He was
Yeah,
the keynote
I don't remember
speaker.
the name of the book. Do you?
Okay,
Okay.
no big deal. It was just a funny
Excuse me,
question.
Beth. Is your request that Becky stop stealing your books?
Yes, exactly.
We wondered how she collects such a big collection of books, and now we know. Jill.
I was wondering where we are with the Region 10 representative situation.
Candy, do you want to?
I guess we had talked at one point about talking with Karen Van Ostrand about not being on the Region 10 board since she's not on the school board anymore. But I told Michelle and Becky tonight that several of the communities that are part of Region 10, they have community members and school board members, not just school board members. So.
And she also expressed an interest in finishing out this year and offered to come do quarterly.
What she said, what she told me that what she had done in the past was she did quarterly reports, not coming necessarily, but giving the board a report.
I think that must have been when she was on the board, because
it might have been,
because she was when she was on the board, she sat on the Region 10 board as well, I believe, for a period. So perhaps that's what she was
referring
referencing
to.
to. Yeah.
But she said she would be glad to do that.
Okay. And then when we revisit in the spring our committee assignments, hopefully we have 2 people willing to step up and fill both spots if that's the will of the board. Susanna.
I'd also second comment about looking at discipline in general. I know I still remember, as does my mother, that I got held in from recess on my first day of kindergarten, and I had no idea why. And my teacher and my mother called my teacher because I came home and she asked how it was, and it's like, well, I didn't get to go to recess, and I was told to sit inside and clean up the classroom with one of my friends. And we had a teacher aide come in and monitor the 2 of us cleaning the classroom. And I didn't understand what I had done, and I didn't understand anything about it, and that hadn't been explained to me. And, the teacher said that I had spoken in class, which, as somebody who never spoke in class when I was at preschool, I had been encouraged, to say something. And I had said something, it was not inappropriate. It was just at a time when we were expected, as Tara mentioned, I think, with, being in circle where people are talking. And I think I had spoken out of turn or something of that sort. And the immediate thing was, okay, you've missed recess. And it was just sort of the impact of what we're doing, just being aware that the impact of what is the intention and what is received are not necessarily the same things. And especially when you're a kid, if you have a 5-minute, 2-minute, it doesn't matter what the time is, that is a very different time perspective than when you're older. And if you don't know what that time is, you can get into sort of psychology studies on, illness, for example, sort of acute versus chronic. If you're in the middle of something where you don't know how long something's going to last, that is something that can, it's a very different experience than if you're, if you understand, for 2 minutes I have to sit on this place. And I just think that, reevaluating or assessing what we do across the board. And I know we've spoken about this. We had a session 2 years ago or so on, was it restraint in things? And I think just across the board, learning about what we're doing and how that's communicated would be kind of interesting.
Thank you. I think there was just a law change, right, that you can't keep kids in from recess as a punishment anymore. Like they've changed. Was that?
Not
fifth grade.
Up to fifth grade.
And I would not say that you can't, but it's
if you're doing restorative justice type of work, you can use that specific
use that time,
but not
right.
as a punitive.
You can't clean the classroom.
Right.
Got it.
I don't know. That's restorative.
Well, depending, right? That's true. I guess if what they did was draw on the walls, I guess that could be restorative. But it's in that vein of not simply taking away recess time as a punishment.
So I guess I would need to know whether the board is wanting a workshop on that. I don't know how to do a half a workshop. I hear what Maddie's saying, but or I could just kind of outline for you in a board update what we kind of do. I could do that.
I think that seems reasonable. And then if
Okay.
the board is like, if it's spurring more questions than answers, then it goes on the plate of what we talk about at the
Retreat.
At the retreat
Okay.
as a workshop request for next year.
Okay, great.
Jill.
Just to piggyback this, because I think, it's interesting because that's one little isolated ask for grades. But I wonder, since our goal has been social emotional learning, I think, and I wonder, just for me being new, I would love to know the last time we looked at our discipline policy, because I'd like to know how it reflects the idea of threat assessment. Because with No Child Left Behind, I kind of felt like we kind of got to no tolerance for anything. We didn't allow, if you did this, you're out. And I'd love, if that's where I don't really have a grasp on our discipline policies, K-12. And the workshop that I did last year through the state on threat assessment and looking at what really is a threat and what needs to be disciplined and what could we work on with keeping students in school and working through the issues when there is an issue. I think that would be an interesting workshop, which I think would encompass the restorative piece and also looking at our social emotional learning piece and looking how that translates to how we work with students when their behaviors don't reflect what we would like to see. Because, it's the behaviors we don't like, it's not the students, and it's better to keep them in school. So that, if we did a workshop, kind of a bigger picture piece, I would appreciate that.
So just as a reminder of how these work. So we sort of collect these ideas as they come up, as people have, raise issues. Sometimes they'll get sort of moved to policy like the memorial one did. Sometimes they'll go to sort of what I refer to as the parking lot. So when, and then, because we have our board meetings scheduled through the year. Obviously, sometimes things will immediately jump to the top of the list depending on what's happening. But we try not to add too many workshops, particularly ones that generally require a good amount of preparation time and usually a lot of staff effort. And then we'll put those into the our annual retreat in August, and really go back and say, okay, these are the things people talked about. These are ones that we've addressed. These are ones that are still outstanding, and then we prioritize where we want to put those into our work plan. So I think that is why we have this on here, so we can collect those ideas and then we bring them back up. Yeah.
Could I take a stab at what I think might be a partial answer to Jill's question, though? About policies?
Sure.
Because, I mean, we just finished our review, so within the last 3 years, we would have looked at the discipline policies, but we are collecting the data with regard to our equity audit, which is quite possibly going to trigger us to look at our policies on discipline. So I would say just hold that thought.
Yeah, as it relates specifically to discipline, it could be something, because we do have that sort of placeholder as it relates to the equity work. So that may be the background information that leads us into that discussion. Mara.
So looking at discipline in general, I agree. Sounds like a workshop and something that should go on the list for discussion this summer. Would it be possible to have an update, like a superintendent's update specifically on the use of timeouts?
Are you talking specifically at a board meeting, or just or a written update, to go in my weekly update? Because if it's a oral presentation at a board meeting, that's really going to be a workshop.
Yep.
Because I'm going to need to get principals involved. That obviously we don't have timeout chairs at the high school, right? A lot of this is, what is developmentally appropriate, right? And so at each level, discipline is handled in different ways. And I would say that we do, as you know, because we've had a workshop on it, use responsive classroom pre-K through 8.
So is that an offer to put it in an update, but not a presentation?
If that's what Morris. Yes,
because I think that's what Maddie's looking for as well.
Well,
right?
and I had heard you say, "Can you give us an overview?"
Yep.
That's just written, and then if we want more, you'll talk about that. We'll talk about that at the retreat.
Yes, Maddie.
This might make sense to all come under that policy review. I mean, if we're going to be looking at discipline, we might, as a policy committee, want to better understand responsive classroom. So it might make sense, instead of a full board workshop, if the policy committee could hear in our meetings, when we get to the place where we're looking at that policy, we may want to better understand the different elements of that, including what we've just heard from our community, which is this concern about the use of timeouts, so that we understand it, so that we can then bring something for the whole board to look at. So it's not an extra workshop, but it's all under the umbrella of reviewing our discipline policy. Sorry, Cynthia. I like to complicate our work.
I think she was nodding affirmatively.
I feel like that just makes sense, but I don't know if other board members agree.
No, and then, as just making sure that maybe sharing with the board, similar to the the memorial one, when those policy meetings are. So for the interested board members who may not be on the policy committee, they can certainly attend to get that background.
Or provide us some input, or, we can give the opportunity to weigh in and ask specific questions like we've done in the past.
Mm-hmm. Jen.
This might not work, but I'm kind of thinking responsive classroom is something it's not, we didn't make it up. It's a lot of us can do our own kind of homework on that. I mean, if there was a thing called that we could look something up, Google, I mean, we can do that, rather than put all the onus on, Becky and the administrators. We can do some it's pretty easy to find that stuff. So I think we can all kind of get a sort of understanding of responsive classroom. Like, obviously we're not going to be able to teach it and we don't get it all, but we can get sort of a broad understanding. I think that would be a good place to sort of start if people are interested.
Yeah, so if you or Cynthia had like a website that you could direct the board to, that you could put in your update, then people could do some more research on their own. Okay. Maybe a little bit more targeted than just typing it into Google. All right. Any other exchange or agenda requests? This might be the first time we've used the whole 10 minutes. Yeah. All right, so we will jump to Finance Committee. Beth.
All right. Well, we had another Finance Committee meeting. Let's see. And basically it was, Rick was going through the budget, and I also got to meet Peggy Brown, who is our interim incoming HR and Finance Director, correct? Yes, okay. So that was wonderful. And yep, just basically Dr. Foley updated us on the issue of finding the cost sharing consultant, and we're just wondering what the next steps would be. And so if she's not able to find someone, we will bring it back to the board for full conversation around what the next steps will be. So that's about it. If anybody has any questions.
All right. Policy. Candy.
Okay. You have the policy committee right here, Patty and me and Colin. And you have a policy subcommittee report in the lavender sheet, which was for the November 19th meeting, and we have met since then. But in the 19th meeting, we talked about the memorials, and we'll be talking about that again in January. And then one that we didn't review that we reviewed in our December meeting. So on our December 3rd meeting, we were working on the discrimination, harassment, and sexual harassment policies. And we met with Ann Chapman and Alan Kropp from Drummond Woodsum to talk about those policies, and particularly to learn more about the Title IX piece. We also had questions for Alan and Ann about Portland's policy, which we had looked at, about some of the discrimination, harassment, sexual harassment, and the lengthy process that Portland had gone through to create it. And ultimately, as we found out, that their policy and ours were very, very similar. It was related to legally required procedures. So, pretty pleased with some of our policy. But what we did like about their work was they had some sections where they talked about their values and that kind of thing. And we talked about the idea and wishing possibly to add an introductory paragraph to those policies where we would speak to our values, particularly our purpose of protecting our students in those policies. We also want our policies to be reflective of the work that's being done, the equity audit happenings in the schools around these issues, and any new equity or diversity policies that may come out of our work. Final drafts will be shared with principals for their feedback, and also seeking input from students through the RSVP program and student leader groups. We'd want their input on this also. And at the meeting, we also reviewed the policy about employee use of cell phones, which will be brought to the board in January. So, and there are 3 policies that Cynthia is going to talk about tonight.
I love the diversity of policies, like these huge discrimination and then how do our employees use their cell phones?
Right.
All right, so we will move to the policy review. Maybe.
I didn't bring them up. Well, there's really nothing to review. We have no, there were just a couple of minor edits from last time, and those were made an ampersand and the, slash and that kind of thing. So really, the full discussion happened about all of these policies, more than one meeting, I think, in some of them. And so I'm just asking for a motion.
All right, so do I have a motion for consideration and approval of the second read of the following policies? BED, remote participation in school board meetings, JL, student wellness, and EFC, nutrition services, meals, meal charging, and prohibition against food shaming. Mara, Zune, thank you for the second. Any questions? So these are all the same policies we reviewed and discussed at our last board meeting. Our procedure is they have a first read. If there's any, sort of minor edits or tweaks based on the conversation, Cynthia will typically point those out at the second read. If there's sort of real major revamping, which we've seen on some, actually, I think the remote policy one, it comes back again sort of to reset as a first read again, and then comes back for a second read. And once the second read is voted on, then the policies become effective for our new board members.
I was going to say the one thing to mention that was kind of in response to the board was adding something about social and emotional wellness to the policy, to the student wellness policy.
Any other questions, comments? All right, you got the motion in a second, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor?
Great, thank you.
Not opposed. All right, so we will move on to unfinished business, the NASDAQ 2021-2022 school by school analysis.
So you have in your packet the additional information that was requested by the board to kind of break it down by a school analysis. I've reviewed that, as I'm sure you have. So I'm really here to answer your questions. I did check in with NASDAQ that presented the study, and there's nothing that is really, there are no alarming trends. I guess for me, the one thing that when I look at the school by school totals on the second page of that smaller packet, I would just note the school that seems to be trending upwards continually is Durham Community School. And so I did talk to Principal Pidden today. He said that school was built to house 505 kids. He said that our addition of the Cub House, or that lovely portable that we purchased with COVID funds, has helped a lot, which now allows more of the grade levels to have 3 sections, and that there is potential in the design of that building to push out if need be. But, for just the immediate future, I don't see, and neither did he, the need to start that right now, but I'm happy to take any questions that any of you might have, or comments, or direction about where we want to go next.
Jill.
Yeah, I was looking at this, and it's a comment, because I understand that these are expensive studies, and it's a piece of information, and it is data that we're looking at that's happened and we're projecting. But I always think, like, sometimes we need to step back and take a bigger look at the world, and look at the time of COVID and looking at real estate right now. Maine is a very different place than it was before March when everything shut down. The other thing for me is, I grew up in Maine, and I moved back to Maine in 2008 and lived in a neighboring district. And I remember having a conversation with the superintendent, who is now long gone, that they had done a similar study like this, and they were looking at their enrollment in Yarmouth going down, and it did not. And just as someone who kind of would live there and watch what happened and got involved, the reason why it changed and shifted, in my humble opinion, and I may be wrong, was because their zoning approach changed. And I live in Pownell, and when I look at the presentation that we received
the building that is cited here is missing some things that are rumbling in town. Rumblings that people are looking to have variances done on our planning board. We're having a comprehensive plan being reviewed, and we're also looking to hire someone to help us write policies. And just as something, I think, that step back, like we have this data and I see what it says, it's kind of flat. But when we start to look at a community that we may be looking at changing how we approach our zoning, I think we need to be mindful of that. And I don't know how often you do these studies, but I think we need to just keep a finger on the pulse. Because the first time that gate is opened, when they change the zoning and start allowing cluster subdivisions, that's going to change the landscape of my town, and it's going to change the number of students who are going to be attending your schools. So I see the numbers here, and I know it's a report and it's based on data, but I think we take the data, but also over here, keep an eye on what's happening every year in our town for building in Pownell. And I'm just saying that as someone who lives there. And so, when I look at this, I'm mindful of that.
And I think that's a good point, right? These are always point in time with the information they have in hand when they write the report, right? And that's why they have all those little, asterisks and, disclaimers, et cetera, at the bottom of these things. It's a tool, but you're exactly right. I mean, as things change, as, large developments are considered in Freeport, or zoning changes are, considered in Pownell, or, whatever it might be, all of those things impact, what the inflows to our schools.
And as a parent in another district, when that changed, when we're supposed to be advocating for students, I'm bringing this up because, I'm a parent of a student who ended up spending a couple years in a portable. And to say that didn't impact their learning, it would be wrong. So those are the things, I think, the reality of the subject we just need to be mindful of.
Yeah. And we need to, stay informed, and if you're seeing those things and concerned about them, making sure we're advocating with the appropriate, towns or councils or, whoever's making those decisions for the towns. Susanna?
Yeah, thank you, Jill, because certainly, and if Freeport's doing a comprehensive plan, and I don't know if that was the one to which you were referring or whether you're referring to your town, but yeah, that's what I thought. So, Freeport's also doing a comp plan, and there's talks about the zoning changes and whatnot in Freeport as well. But building on that, universal pre-K coming in, how is that going to affect numbers? How is that, if that is something we need to deal with, is that bringing in?
We pretty much have that now.
Okay, because, all right, I wasn't sure if we totally have that, or because there's been talk in the past about it sort of being a lottery system of, allowing.
No, it really is. Well, I think this year we had it in every community, but even in the past, I think for the last couple of years, we've been able to give them a spot. It may not be in the community where they live.
But is that...
So we were, we were able to provide it, but...
But that's also providing not... I'm just wondering, if universal pre-K is a thing, is that drawing more students than those who might not be considering pre-K now anyway? So is it a different body to say, a different student number to say that, yes, we've been able to allocate a spot to everyone for whom a spot has been once sought? Is that a different number than all 3 and 4-year-olds in the community, for example? I mean, who might take it if it is the universal system? And
so even when you offer universal pre-K, they don't have to all come here, right? And so what I'm saying is that we're offering universal pre-K, but our numbers in pre-K are not what they are when they go to kindergarten.
Okay.
And I would say that's primarily because it's not a full-day program.
Right.
Which we are not. I don't know of many districts that are doing a full-day program 5 days a week. So we have fluctuated between doing a full-day program for 2.5 days or doing the half-day program, and it seems our administrators prefer the half-day program currently. And so we still have families that are opting into other scenarios that provide full day
Yep.
care. We do offer our pre-K through community ed so that many of the families who want a full day offering can have it between the two programs.
Okay, no, thank you. And my last point is just on the changing landscape. I know, like Jen, also working in another school district where they're foreseeing the changing landscape of students in the sense that current and post-pandemic, the ability of parents and families to work remotely is certainly changing. A lot of people who used to work in, picking on something, to say tech in Silicon Valley, are now have been working remotely and have been told they're not coming back to the office. So why pay for expensive, housing out, in San Francisco, Palo Alto, when you can come to Maine where it's so much nicer? I mean, people who are, Maine has seen a difference, it has impacted our housing market, and it's looking like it's possibly going to continue to impact our housing market, and that the trajectory that we could be seeing can be a very different landscape than what we've had. And just knowing that the district, the school that I work with, and having seen it with some other schools, that's something that they're pinning as, this is a concern we have for our enrollment in the coming years that we haven't had it before. And so I just think that since other schools are quite concerned about it and looking at it, that it's something that we want to keep on our radar.
Maddie.
It was curious to me that you mentioned Durham School, Becky, and not our not Moore Street and Pownell, because they were sort of next on the list. The projections being just a little under that, and I think that, I can't speak for Valley, nor would I dare to, but I think that might be why she had asked for some of this information, because we've been kind of dancing around this. The next two schools that need the most help are probably those two schools, and there's this question of should they be next on the list to renovate, and then this notion of, do we build a brand new school that houses all of them, which I think is personally, I think that would put communities in uproar and is a bad idea. But anyway, I'm curious what you're seeing.
Well, I'm just not, when I look at, let's just do Pownell because it's so easy. I asked whether my thinking was solid when I spoke to the person from Karen Ledoux. But, in the 17-18, it was at 114, and they're predicting at 26-27. Is that? Oh, okay. And so to me, what you're asking are two very different questions. One is it time to do a massive renovation because of the age of our buildings? And the other one is, are we outgrowing our buildings? And I think for the moment, based upon this snapshot in time, which is, we can we can disregard this data, or we can say we see the data, but we really think that they're off for their 5-year projection, and let's move forward with, adding a renovation somewhere. And so, I'm open to all of that. It's just that I didn't see any huge fluctuation in numbers. As you can see at Moore Street, they seem to be, this year, next year, the following year, they're at their peak, and then they're being projected to decline. So based upon the enrollment is all I was responding to. I don't see the need for adding on to our buildings for additional space, especially at Moore Street, where, again, they also received a portable that has helped with their, space constraints. But the other question, Moore Street is older, and, does the board want to look at a whole different building or look at a more extensive renovation? To me, that's a different discussion.
Right. And I think that was the point of this process, was to say, okay, let's not look at renovating if we're going to outgrow, right? Like, let's not fix what we've got to be like, ooh, we should have added some space, or we should have moved it. So, this was sort of step one is, what's the long-term capital plan here for these buildings as they age, right? Are they worth improving? Are they, we just redid we just signed off on the warrant for the couple $100,000 replacement of the roof at Mass Landing, right? We do a good job of taking good care of our buildings, but sometimes you do get to the point where they need a little bit more than just general maintenance. So I think that was sort of step one of the process, was let's make sure we're not fixing buildings we're going to outgrow. Jen.
So I think on what Jill said, I think that we should, keep the pulse on this. I think this should be in our purple folder, and we look at it a lot. Because I think one thing that's not taken in consideration is a pandemic. So, I had a family move across the street, exactly what you said. Massachusetts, never planned to leave, both work remote, here they are with a baby. So, that's a new thing that's happening. So I think, we just use this as a starting point and just really keep looking at it and keep kind of moving and changing as we see it how it's going to go.
I think that's a great idea because, you can very quickly next year, because they started predicting, right? And you can see how close are you on your projection, and if they're way off, well, that's worth noting.
Maura.
So I'm just wondering if the next step would also include a continuation of our conversation, like you were referring to, about Moore Street School and the age of the facility and updating it, and like our continuation of that conversation that we started. Does that go on our, list for next year, or I don't know, just something to think about?
I think it also goes on, Dennis's list of when he's prioritizing his work, right? To have him be thinking about that, because I think he's probably better equipped than most of us to sort of know the scope of what could be undertaken there.
I'd also be interested in knowing like the limitations of the facility, given its age. What constraints are there if we're going to expand the existing facility? Like, what are we giving up from versus having a more modern facility? When he's making those recommendations to us.
You good, Jill? You still have a comment?
It's so late. I don't want to talk, but because we have this data, because of this big picture, bringing it down to our school level, I just would ask that, look at how, look at our current practice of taking new enrollments. I just would want to know, are we encouraging families, once they have proof that they're going to live here in the fall and enroll their students, do we try to take them early, or do we have kind of a gate? Because we're finishing up the school year and we don't have time to do this yet. I just think I would, because of the times we're in, maybe look at how we're approaching that and making sure we get as much data early before school starts. When we look at those things, because I think that sometimes families move in and schools are, there's not always staff in the building in the summer, but thinking about if you could get a read, because I just feel like last year, there's a little bit of a bump with people moving to the state of Maine, and just in the next year or two, maybe looking at how we take in those enrollment packets and maybe try to get them earlier so we kind of know how many kids are coming. It might be, we might not have a bump, which is fine, but I would like to have that information earlier than waiting until August.
So we take enrollment throughout the year. And so all of our secretaries work, I think at least one day a week throughout the summer. And then I think there's a request that we've just seen in the budget to increase that. I think it was at Durham. So that the guidance counselors can be more available to really assess the level of the need. And definitely when parents are ready to enroll their kids, that's when we enroll them. So we don't you know, if they want to come in March so that the kids, you know, meet other kids so that they can have play dates over the summer, we encourage that.
All right. Any other comments on the report? All right. We already finished new business. We mark that one up. No personnel. We've driven everyone away from public comment. Although we did have quite a good public comment at the beginning of the meeting. That was great. All right. So I got to find my motion for. It's all right. We're going into executive session. They got to turn off the camera anyway. Just got to find my motion here. Okay, so do I have a motion for consideration and approval to enter into executive session as outlined in 1 MRSA section 4056A to discuss a personnel matter? Jill and Zune, thank you. All those in favor? None opposed. Great. 9:45.